Okay, give me just a sec and we'll get started. Okay, hi, and welcome to more Phoenix Wright. Oh, whoops. Hey, Nautilus, how are you doing?
So, what do you think, Mr. Wright?
I think the prosecution is as confused as we are. Doing Warframe. Nice. After all,
The victim was murdered in two places at the same time. And a different suspect was arrested at each of the crime scenes. Lana! Good morning, Mr. Wright. I apologize for yesterday. I was indisposed.
I hope they didn't hold you too long for questioning.
We just finished, actually. I'm used to all-nighters, though. So, how'd it go? It's as Mr. Wright suspects. The police are clueless. I figured as much, so I struck a plea bargain. Plea bargain? What do you mean by that? We agreed that if I told them the truth behind this simultaneous murder, they wouldn't seek capital punishment. That's what I mean, Emma. But, Lana, don't tell me you... Much to my regret, I'm as much in the dark about this as they are.
Miss Skye. Found a trace of evidence from a certain person in the police department's evidence room. They belong to Officer Jake Marshall.
What kind of trace evidence?
Blood-stained fingerprints, to be exact. That's the trump card I have up my sleeve today. You do understand what this means, don't you?
In order to defend my sister, you're going to accuse Mr. Marshall?
You have to play the cards we're dealt. Isn't that right, Miss Skye?
Do what you have to do, Mr. Wright.
Court is now in session for the trial of Miss Lana Skye. Defense is ready, Your Honor.
The prosecution is...
Oh, I'm afraid you'll have to clarify.
It takes 30 minutes by car to reach the police department from the prosecutor's office. Yet the victim, Bruce Goodman, was slain at both places at the same time.
That's not physically possible, is it? What's more, I hear the victim from the evidence room just disappeared.
Yes, and the body eventually reappeared in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car.
Wow, this is one messed up trial.
One of my duties as prosecutor is to present impartial evidence. Today, I will present evidence relating to the murder at the police department. In so doing, I believe the way in which we should proceed will reveal itself. And that's what sets Mr. Edgeworth apart. He sounds so on top of things, even though he doesn't know what's going on himself.
That's supposed to be an admirable trait? I don't think you have any room to speak on that, Phoenix. You do that all the time. Very well, let the trial resume. On the day of the crime, what exactly transpired at the police department? Mr. Edgeworth, you may call your first witness of the day to the stand.
For its first witness, the prosecution calls the suspect of the murder that occurred at the police department.
Suspect? You mean the so-called murderer?
Oh boy.
Things are getting wild from the get-go.
Will the witness please state his name and occupation?
Yes, sir. I'm Officer Mike Meekin, sir. My occupation is,
That would be murderer, sir.
So you're telling us that you're a professional killer?
Sir, it was me, sir. I'm the one who did it.
Sorry, I'm peeking my mic.
I'll never kill anyone again, sir. You've got to believe me.
Actually, what we'd like to hear from you is...
Sir, I'm what you would call a part of the younger generation, sir. Persons whose actions adults can't possibly comprehend.
Please, Mr. Edgeworth, sir, help me, sir.
Officer Meekins. Yes, sir? Give us your report of the crime. Consider that an order. Yes, sir, as you wish. After all, I'm part of the generation that must be told what to do, sir. You can't fault him for a lack of enthusiasm. Although it's not my normal duty, I was assigned to guard the evidence room that day. Spotted a suspicious man on the security screen and rushed into the room. I was only doing what I was trained to, sir. I was suddenly attacked. I fought for my life, then I did it. After that, I passed out till another officer smacked me awake.
So the victim, Detective Goodman, attacked you.
Do unto others before they do unto you. That's the Meekins family motto, sir.
I see. And you fainted, and your colleague helped you regain consciousness.
Yes, sir. He knocked me upside the head, sir.
Very well. The defense may begin its cross-examination.
What I need here is more info to work with. Although it's not my normal duty, I was assigned to guard the evidence room that day.
Mr. Meekins, you work in the General Affairs Department, do you not?
Yes, sir. I'm in charge of hiring new recruits, sir.
Yikes. There's a scary thought.
Evidence transfer was taking place on the day of the crime, which meant many officers were given special tasks not ordinarily performed. I was in charge of guarding the Blue Badger, sir.
Blue Badger?
Yes, sir. The lovely police mascot created by the Chief of Detectives, sir.
Get used to hearing this. Get used to hearing the Blue Badger theme. You'll be hearing it a lot.
I was to ensure it wasn't broken during the transferal process. That's my sole mission for the day, sir.
I see. Sounds like a very, important mission.
After the award ceremony finished that day, there were so many people running around, and I relocated the Blue Badger to the evidence room. Yeah, crap on my act. Give me a sec. Maybe I've just got crap on my glasses, actually. It's gonna take me forever to clean them, so I'm just gonna work through it.
Oh, so that's why you went to the evidence room.
Tell us, what did you see when you got there? I spotted a suspicious man on the security screen and rushed into the room.
In order to enter the evidence room, you need an ID card, am I correct?
Precisely, sir. I have one right here around my neck.
Hey, how are you doing, Jubear? It's been a hot minute. It has been a while. I remember that you stopped in one time, like... I don't remember what game you were playing. Got to head to bed, but you can stick around for a little longer. Trying to remember what game you popped in last, because I remember the time before last was during Xenogears, but I don't remember the time after that. So then, your ID number should be listed on here, right?
There it is. I found it. This is the one right here.
Can you please read us the number? I think you're still thinking of the Xenogears one.
Yes, sir. It is 4989596. That's my number, sir.
See. Huh? The number 4989596. Shown as being used twice. Please explain, witness.
It's no real mystery, sir. First time is when I relocated the Blue Badger to the evidence room. Second time is when I went to go get him after everything settled down.
I see. So it was during that second time when...
Yes, sir. That's when I spotted the man on the security screen. I was only doing what I was trained to do, sir. I was suddenly attacked.
Yeah, how have you been? So you were attacked. Can you please help us, or please tell us exactly what happened to you?
It was a knife, sir. A knife.
Detective Goodman pulled a knife on you? What happened then? Here and there?
Well, with me charging in on him like that, he looked as surprised as I was.
You aren't exactly the kind of person someone would want to run into.
That's when I reacted, sir.
Got your hand in wrappings right now? Aw.
I swung my arms like an octopus, struggling to detain him.
Had a run-in with a clock?
Huh. That's how I got this gash on my hand. Maybe if you had just kept cool, your hand wouldn't be... When I saw the blood trickling down my arm, I panicked. I grabbed the man by his collar. I fought for my life, and then I did it.
What exactly do you mean when you say you did it?
I know I don't look the type, but I'm really into kung fu films, sir. The man let his guard down for just an instant, so I snatched his knife from him.
I totally understand that. Like, I've messed up my hands messing around with stuff like that as well. You took his knife.
Spun him around and performed a disarming maneuver. Made sure to close my eyes like a man.
I see. Must have been desperate.
The next thing I knew, his white coat was drenched in a sea of my blood, and the next thing I knew...
Yes?
He punched me right in my face, sir. After that, I passed out, and another officer smacked me awake.
About what time did you regain consciousness?
No offense, sir, but how am I supposed to know that? I was unconscious.
Oh, right.
According to the report from the officer that woke up the witness, it was about 5:30.
Got attention to it quickly, so it should be fine. That's good.
He hit me right in the head, too. I woke up crying tears of pain.
That's nice. I mean, that's nice that you recovered, that is.
When I came around, though, I made sure to finish my mission, sir.
Your mission?
Yes, sir. The Blue Badger, sir. I returned him to the entrance before things got out of hand.
Well, we can all rest easy now. I believe we now have a fairly accurate picture of what happened.
Yes, Your Honor. Only one thing remains unclear. Was the man this officer murdered really the victim?
I've been doing pretty good. Playing a bit of the new Zelda game in my off time, and really enjoying it. Playing through this, which is a game that I love on stream, so... He's got a point. Yes, Officer Meekins?
With regard to that, sir, take a look at this. It was sent to my jail cell. Chief Gant delivered it to me just this morning, sir. The Chief.
Delivered it? What is that? A videotape?
Yes, sir. That's exactly right, sir. A videotape, sir. It contains footage from the security camera in the evidence room.
What? But I specifically asked if there was such a tape, and was told it had been mistakenly erased. It's quite a mistake.
I just do what I'm told, sir. It's the only thing I'm really good at.
Looks like communication with the police department is as good as ever. Well then, let's have a look. Show us the video of you murdering the victim. You let this maniac in with your megaphone? Honestly, all things considered, Mike Meekins is a very tame, witness.
Oh, please stop using that word, murder, sir. It scares me.
A video of a real murder. Just what are we getting ourselves into? Don't worry, Phoenix. You're getting yourself into unending pain. And all of the DS's 20 frames per second. A megaphone is a megaphone. This video is infamous, by the way. Convenient flag. Yeah. The convenient flag that just so happens to block his face. Well, I believe we're all thinking the same thing. How can we deal with these unsettling feelings stirred within us? And what the hell was that wriggling piece of plywood?
Sir, that's the pride and joy of the entire criminal affairs department, sir. It's the Blue Badger, sir.
Why am I not surprised this isn't going smoothly? Yes, well, anyway. This tape seems to prove that the witness did indeed encounter, someone in the evidence room, and some sort of, activity did take place. Your Honor, instead of relying on clearly incomplete footage, the witness's testimony will suffice. Is that all right with you, Officer Meekins?
Yes, sir. As you wish, sir. His face can't be clearly seen in the video, but there's no question that the other person was Detective Goodman, sir. I mean, he opened the locker, which required Detective Goodman's fingerprint to do. The locker he opened is unquestionably Detective Goodman's locker, sir. So it must be him. No one else could have unlocked it.
Is this about a fingerprint? Each detective has been given a locker equipped with a fingerprint-activated lock. These locks ensure that each locker can only be opened by the detective it belongs to. Intriguing. That would mean the victim at the crime scene would have to have been Detective Goodman. Very well. The defense may begin its cross-examination. I don't know where this cross-examination will lead, but everything begins with contradictions. That's where I have to start.
His face can't be clearly seen in the video because of the magic convenient flag.
Tell me, were you able to get a good look at him? At the face of the man who attacked you with a knife?
Sir, if you must label people as having seen or not seen the man's face, I believe I would be classified as the latter.
Latter? You were standing right in front of him, were you not? More to the point, you are the person who fought him, aren't you?
Oh, yes, sir. But I didn't get a clear look at his face, sir. I'm not the kind of guy who looks directly at people when talking with them, you see?
Yeah, that's a good trait for a police officer.
Still, I'm sure it was him. I bet my badge on it. There's no question that the other person was Detective Goodman, sir.
But you don't know that for sure, do you? You never actually saw Detective Goodman's face.
Well, I suppose you might say that. That is, if you must label people as having seen or not seen it.
Since his face can't be identified in the video, only you can verify it.
Why is everyone looking at me? If I had to label your stares as disturbing or...
Meekins. Having been shown a questionable video at best, we are not in the best of moods. Now please be more certain when you testify.
Yes, sir.
You claimed the man who brandished a knife on you was Detective Bruce Goodman. Tell us why you are positive it was him.
I mean, he opened the locker, which required Detective Goodman's fingerprint to do.
About these lockers, is there no other way to open them?
No, sir. I myself tried all kinds of methods in the past. They only respond to registered fingerprints, sir.
What are kind of methods he's tried? If the man opened the locker's lock, which only responds to its registered fingerprints, then he must be the person the locker was assigned to.
Exactly my point, sir, and this too. The locker he opened is unquestionably Detective Goodman's locker, sir.
How do you know that information?
I've heard rumors, sir, from people in the know, sir.
People in the know?
Workers in the department cafeteria, sir. They keep me informed. They also listen to my romantic troubles, sir.
For the record, the opened locker did indeed belong to Detective Goodman. I verified this information through a more reliable source. The victim opened the locker with his own fingerprint.
So it must be him. No one else could have unlocked it.
However, the most important detail is not shown in this video. The man's face.
Sir, if I may say something, sir.
Please do. After all, you're the one being examined.
I don't understand why the man's face is so important in this case, sir. I mean, it was his hand that opened the fingerprint lock. And it was his hand that tried to thrust his knife into my body, sir. My unsettled state can testify enough to this, sir.
Yes, you have a point. The footage doesn't lie. That is, unless the defense can find a problem with it.
Mr. Wright, let's check the court record again.
Is there a problem with the security video? Yes. Regarding the video contained on this tape, there's one thing in particular that seems rather strange. Strange? This contradiction leads to the possibility that the man may not have been Detective Goodman. What? This video contains such a contradiction? Interesting. Your Honor, I have a proposal. Yes, Mr. Edgeworth? I propose we have the defense point out to us this alleged contradiction in the video. You would want me to point it out. Very well, proposal accepted. Let us further inspect this piece of evidence. I will now play the security tape. Mr. Wright, please show us this contradiction you speak of. I have to point out a problem in the video? This is the first time I've ever had to do that.
You can do it, Mr. Wright. It's set up so you can fast forward, rewind, or pause the video. Just take a good look and be sure to point out the right thing. Please don't play it too many times. I can't stand watching this video.
Don't worry, Meekins. No one else can either. How did this guy ever become a police officer? Now then, Mr. Wright, please enlighten us. Where is the contradiction that indicates the man may not be Detective Goodman? Why, yes, that is strange. Strange that you still have that badge of yours. Oh, wait, it's this right here. Nope. Stop moving, please. thing that's strange about this video has got to be this. Officer Meekins.
Sir, do you mean me, sir?
As I understand it, the locker apparatus works like this. When you grab the handle, a sensor reads your fingerprint if it's a match. The light turns on and the lock is released.
According to my very limited experience, that's the way I understand it, sir.
If so, then something's seriously wrong with this picture. When the victim reaches for the handle to open the locker, let's rewind to a little earlier. We have to do this without fast forwarding. Nope. It does not, in fact, run any faster. You gotta sit through this video many, many times. Here, notice the light? What's this? It's already lit. Precisely my point, Your Honor. The locker was already open before the victim grabbed the handle. Order, order. What's the meaning of this? It's very simple, Your Honor. The locker wasn't locked on the day of the crime. But the locker locks are controlled by an electronic system. When a door is shut, a sensor is triggered. Do you ever need the badge? No, you just show the badge to everyone. It's the universal piece of evidence that you show everyone, and yes, it is actually required in a handful of cases, actually. And the locker is automatically locked. Oh, I know. It must have broken down. Of course, I'm not an expert in this. That's not likely, Your Honor. The sensor would detect and report any malfunction. Yeah. You present it as... Well, you don't present it as evidence in a case, but you present it as evidence outside of a case in a couple occasions. Just in, like... You present the badge to everyone. Just, it's the source of many memes. But it's also required in a handful of cases outside of court. Oh well, just goes to show novices keep their mouths shut. Keep their mouths shut. How else will they know you're a lawyer? So then, Mr. Wright, do you have an explanation? Me, Your Honor? Yes, why wasn't the locker locked? Me, Your Honor? Yes, well, you see, this isn't exactly my field. What do you think, Miss Scientific Investigator?
Huh? Oh, maybe something like jam the system sensor?
Something jammed the sensor? Say. Something else that seems out of place in this video.
Yeah, I thought so too. There's gotta be another clue somewhere in this footage, so let's watch the video again. And again, and again.
Very well, let's inspect the video once more. Locker wasn't locked, Miss... Wow, why did that cut so fast? What the hell? I know that this man was the murderer. I can prove it. As you can see, as a lawyer, I've represented loads of murderers, so I can identify them on sight. Please watch closely. This is a continuation of the part I showed you earlier. We have to watch this back in normal speed. Also, I like how Detective Gumshoe's fishing pole is lodged in between the things there.
What's this? Something white fell out of the locker.
But sir, it's been my experience that things fall out when doors are opened. I often fall out and roll great distances when I open my...
I can't be sure. That item was completely inside the locker to begin with. What do you mean?
The sensor triggers the lock when the door is shut. What if something was inserted, say, between the sensor and the door? Yes, but being a lawyer doesn't keep you from being an idiot, too. You're not a clown, you're the entire circus.
That's not an actual line, by the way. That's a meme that isn't based on an actual line. As far as I'm aware, anyway. I think there is a similar line, but I don't think that the exact line of "you're not a clown, you're the entire circus" isn't actually a proper line. Inserted. It's just dead silent. They're just like, you don't want to listen to the Blue Badger theme.
This white thing wasn't inside the locker. It was stuck between the door and the sensor.
Oh, I understand now, sir. It's just like my tie. 2 out of 3 times it gets stuck in the door when I get out of my patrol vehicle, sir. Instead of the door closing, my tie...
I want to see what the rest of that text box said. Instead of the door closing, my tie chokes me. The object would have to be extremely thin to fit in the door.
Not only that, it would have to block electrical currents. It would need to be an insulator.
Yes, an insulator. At the crime scene,
there just might have been something that fits the description.
But sir, by insulator, you don't mean...
I think I've finally got this figured out.
Very well. The defense, please present the relevant evidence. What was this insulator that was stuck in the locked door?
I am a lawyer. Also, we're at 3 pages of evidence for the first and only time in this game. I found this near the locker. A thin rubber glove.
But we can't be sure that was in the victim's locker.
It has a tag that says SL9 incident. The video seems to depict the victim opening the locker. But that isn't the case. The lit lamp attests to this. On the day of the crime, even I could have opened that locker. Is this not so, Officer Meekins?
Sir, it would appear so.
Order, order, order. So are we to believe, then, that the victim, this witness stabbed in the evidence room, is not Detective Goodman?
Do not be misled, Your Honor.
What do you mean, Mr. Edgeworth?
It just gives generic text if you present wrong evidence in court. It'll be just like, it's like, this object is why, and then it's like,
I don't think so, Mr. Wright. Have a penalty.
That's more or less how presenting wrong stuff goes.
What do you mean, Mr. Edgeworth?
The defense has merely demonstrated that possibility and nothing more. The victim in the video was indeed Bruce Goodman. The prosecution will offer one more testimony to prove this.
The issue is that I have to, in order to do that, I would have to go all the way back to the start of the court segment, which would lose me half an hour of progress.
What? Officer Meekins, please testify about this.
Sir, me, sir? I'm not sure what you're referring to, sir. Oh, you mean that, sir? Of course, sir.
Is this a joke?
Very well, begin your testimony.
There's one other thing that proves the man was Detective Goodman, sir. To enter the evidence room, one must use their ID card. When an ID card is used, there's a record of it. At the time of the crime, the detective had used this card.
ID card record, I see.
I have the ID card record right here, Your Honor. The ID used at 514 is that of the victim.
Just before the crime, Yes, without a doubt, that is the victim's ID. However, one thing does strike me as unusual. Several hundred cases should have been due for transferal. Why were there so few people using this room?
This particular evidence room is only used for storing certain special cases.
Special cases?
Extremely violent cases involving police staff.
Just hearing that makes my hair stand on end.
Me too, although it doesn't make much of a difference.
There were only a few cases up for transferal there, and most were cleared up by noon.
Right, I see. Now let us move on to the cross-examination.
Don't mind me, I took one swallow of water and I'm dying. There's one other thing that proves the man was Detective Goodman, sir.
So, unlike your earlier testimony, you believe this to be rock solid, do you?
Yes, sir. Solid as a stone, sir. If my hand wasn't wrapped in bandages, I'd even given the V for victory sign, sir. Couldn't he just use his right hand for that?
Let's hear him out fully. As we've seen, one never knows what he might say until the very last second.
To enter the evidence room, one must use their ID card.
Is that card hanging from your neck one of these ID cards?
Yes, sir. That card right next to my cuff, sir. I keep it here so I won't ever forget it.
What if someone were to steal it from you, keeping it out in the open like that?
Maybe I shouldn't wear it around my neck. I remember when I said 2 out of 3 times my tie gets... remember when I said 2 out of 3 times my tie gets stuck when I get out of my car? Well, the remaining time it's my ID card that gets stuck. Instead of the door closing, my ID card chokes me.
Maybe I should just leave this one alone.
At any rate, each police officer only has one ID card. Both the police department and the prosecutor's office can attest to this.
Please proceed with your testimony.
When an ID card is used, there's a record of it.
Have a good one, Juber. Thanks for stopping by. Let it be noted that this is the record of the witness referred to. Let me see. Yes, that would be it. Detective Goodman. What's the matter? According to this, Mr. Edgeworth, your name is on here.
So it is, Your Honor.
Not that prosecutor again.
Hey, maybe he's behind all of this. Being a prosecutor, he could hide the evidence. Mommy, is that man in blue a murderer? Shh, don't stare at him.
You got the wrong color, kid. It would seem the inquiry committee will want to speak with you again today.
I have nothing to be ashamed of regarding my actions or their consequences. For now, let us continue with the cross-examination.
Poor Mr. Edgeworth. It must be so difficult for him. At the time of the crime, the detective had used his card.
Earlier, I believe you testified that when you asked the man to show his ID card, he pulled a knife on you.
Yes, sir. He didn't show me any ID card, sir.
Don't you think that's odd? I mean, if he had his ID card, all he had to do was show it to you. There wouldn't be any reason to draw a knife.
Maybe he just panicked.
Everything stems from contradictions. Let's point them out.
Mr. Wright, what do you think?
I'm confused.
What?
Problem with this ID card testimony is far too obvious. It's not like Edgeworth to miss something like this.
You're thinking too hard about it. Come on, let's show him what we got.
We found this at our crime scene. So he couldn't have used it because it was over at the prosecutor's office. Wait one moment, Officer Meekins.
I'm not good at waiting, sir.
I have the victim's ID card right here. I found it at the crime scene. That makes sense. When I say crime scene, I'm not referring to the evidence room at the police department. I mean the other crime scene. The underground parking lot at the prosecutor's office. Your Honor, I have one more piece of evidence to present. It's a very important clue regarding the victim's ID card. Lost item report? It's only half completed. But it shows that Detective Goodman had lost something on the day of the crime. Something important enough to fill out this report. Let me guess, you believe this something to be his ID card, right? I can't say for sure. There's a high probability. On the day of the crime, Detective Goodman was not carrying his card. Order, order. So now, what does this all mean? It can only mean one thing. It doesn't even require much thought. The man Officer Meekins encountered in the evidence room was not Detective Goodman, but rather the man who stole his ID card. Order, order, order. Does the prosecution have a response? I have only one thing to say to the defense. Bravo, Mr. Wright. Bravo? Allow me to summarize the defense's argument. At 5:15 p.m. on the day of the crime, the man in the evidence room Officer Meekins encountered was not Detective Goodman. Therefore, there are two grounds to support this. First, the locker in the evidence room was already unlocked. Second, the victim lost his ID card. No, this man in the evidence room we're trying to say is not Goodman. Am I correct so far, right, Mr. Wright? Yes? What's he up to? That being the case, we must inevitably arrive at a single conclusion. If the victim in this video is fake, then the murder in the evidence room is also fake. In other words, the security camera does not show the instant of the murder. That is... Well, I guess that's right. Is something wrong, Mr. Wright? Only moments ago, you seemed content to be pointing your finger around. This isn't going to end well. Well, well, it seems you finally realized. Exactly what you've gone to such lengths to prove. Explain yourself, Mr. Edgeworth. The defense has already done the explaining for me. The victim in this video is fake, which means that a murder did not take place. At the police department at 5:15 on the day of the crime. So the real crime could only take place at one location, the underground parking lot. At the prosecutor's office, the murderer being Miss Lana Skye, the defendant. The evidence is compelling. A trustworthy witness observed the moment the defendant used the murder weapon. Ah! I knew that testimony was way too shabby. It was all a trap from the beginning.
Activity in the evidence room still leaves many questions unanswered. Who exactly was the victim Officer Meekins encountered? And where did this person disappear to? However, this trial's purpose is to examine only the murder of Detective Goodman.
Just so, Your Honor.
Mr. Wright, you have to do something or else Lana...
What do I do? How am I supposed to get myself out of this mess? One moment, Your Honor. What now, Mr. Wright? Don't tell me you're objecting to what you've just proven. Of course not. But I almost walked right into the prosecution's trap. What are you talking about? This cross-examination has proven one thing and one thing only. The security video did not show the actual murder. Sit here and watch this in silence, Edgeworth. However, it cannot be said that it is unrelated to the murder in the parking lot. Specifically, large amounts of blood traces were found in the evidence room. The defense demands further examination into the truth of the matter.
Yeah. Sorry, give me a sec. Mr. Edgeworth?
Yes, Your Honor.
If the court were to examine this further, other witnesses would be necessary. Is the prosecution prepared?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. The prosecution considered the incident at the police department to be unrelated. We have not prepared any other witness for this incident. This just might be my chance. Time to call a certain Texas Ranger to the stand.
Mr. Wright, do you mean...
Your Honor, the defense would like to request a specific witness.
Oh? Who do you have in mind?
Someone we have reason to believe knows the truth. Truth behind the activities that took place in the evidence room. The prosecution requests to hear this person's name before deciding whether or not to comply.
Very well then. Mr. Wright, the person whom you would have testify. What is his or her name?
Jake Marshall.
Oh. Mr. Wright, I'm not even going to bother asking you why. Never seen a more obvious stall tactic in my entire career.
Mr. Wright, don't you remember what you said this morning? You know, about your trump card?
That's right. Those bloody fingerprints we found in the evidence room. Now's my chance to bring him in to testify.
Well then.
I actually, unironically, fat-fingered that somehow. I don't understand how I managed to fat-finger the X button. Officer Jake Marshall. Why him? Can't let Edgeworth know everything just yet. He's in charge of the evidence room. I feel we should hear what he has to say. The prosecution agrees to the defense's request. Since he was responsible for guarding the room, we should hear his testimony. Fortunately, he works in the police department. We shouldn't need longer than 20 minutes to prepare.
Very well. Court will take a 30-minute recess while the witness is subpoenaed. Will the prosecution please prepare the witness during this time?
We want to, yes, we want to call the victim to the stand. Sachi, please tell me that you've seen the meme in, the Ace Attorney meme that's just like, dead men tell no tales? Wrong. I summon my first witness, the victim. We will, Your Honor.
Court is now in recess.
There's no stopping you, is there, Mr. Wright?
Huh? What do you mean?
You called for Jake Marshall. It seems you've figured everything out.
I haven't figured anything out.
Lana, you're the one who knows everything. Emma, you always know everything. Why don't you just tell us? Mr. Wright is trying his hardest to protect you. I don't recall ever asking for his protection. How can you be so cold? Don't you trust us? Don't you trust me?
Hope I'm not interrupting anything, pals. Oh, guess I am. I'll come back later. Wait, Detective Gumshoe, what is it? Got a lot of nerve, pal, making a detective run all around while on duty. To top it off, you call me here. Seen happier people at funerals.
Sorry, Detective.
Better be, pal. Hey, 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 hey. I didn't see you there, Chief Prosecutor Sky.
That's okay. So, have you brought what I asked for?
Oh. Oh. You mean this, right?
My apologies, Detective. Due to my present circumstances, I was forced to use Mr. Wright's name when making my request.
My name? Never in a million years would I have thought it was you who asked me. Can I bother you to bring me the SL9 incident files? I'll need them by noon. Talk about crazy.
SL9 incident? But, Lana, that's... I thought Mr. Wright might need them, so I had them brought here. Here, you might do well to read them.
Can't believe you. Chief Prosecutor or a witness in that case.
Miss Sky was a witness?
Take it from me. You don't want anything to do with serial murders. What? Now that I brought you your stuff, you're just gonna ignore me?
Emma?
But why? Why is your name in here?
What? My name's in there? I don't know, unless... No, it couldn't be. Lana, this SL9 incident, is that... That's the classification number the police filed it under. 2 years ago, the rest of the world knew it as the Joe Dark killings. The... Joe Dark... No. No, Lana. That's over with. No.
Emma, wait. She ran away. You know what? Just remembered. Gotta be somewhere. Sorry, pal, but I'm out of here. Jake Marshall, Angel Starr, Damon Gant, Miles Edgeworth. Not to mention Lana and Emma. Everyone involved in this case is connected to those killings 2 years ago. This can't be just a coincidence.
Knowing you, you just might be able to figure it out. Time to get back to the trial, Mr. Wright. Best of luck.
Better take a good look at this file. Court will now reconvene for the trial of Miss Lana Sky.
Emma didn't come back. Allow me to call the next witness to the stand. The officer in charge of guarding the evidence room on the day of the crime.
At the very least, Marshall's voice is very easy to do. Ow! Ow!
Managed to, like, pop my elbow.
Witness, please state your name and occupation.
Hey, partner. I'm just a man, same as you. Wandering the trails of civilization.
Occasionally helping the elderly cross intersections when needed. Yes, we get it.
Oh, I know. You're a patrolman. As for my name, you listen hard enough, you can hear the howling wind calling it out.
To be exact, it's Jake Marshall, Your Honor.
Howling wind? I've never heard Edgeworth described that way before. Now, Mr. Marshall, wow.
Now, Mr. Marshall, let me ask you something. You were in charge of guarding the evidence room on the day the crime took place. Is this correct?
According to the papers, partner. What do you mean? Desperado's soul is as boundless as the desert sands. No paper can sum it up. Maybe it's best we get on with this quickly. Please share with us your testimony of the day of the crime. In plain old English.
My job was to keep a wary eye on that bone orchard.
Said I was supposed to make rounds 3 times a day, but that ain't my style. Besides, the room's protected by 2 security systems anyway. If I remember right, I was in the street side saloon at the time I went down. Just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time I hit the trail. I can't say I particularly care for your attitude. Can't say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining.
Wait a minute. What do you mean by 2 security systems?
I mean the security cameras and the ID card reader. I reckon even a cowpoke like you knows about those.
Yes, well, what about the fingerprint-activated locks on the evidence lockers?
Fingerprint-activated locks? What kind of newfangled doohickeys are those?
It's not being very helpful.
He's not that good with machines, or following orders.
Everyone's got their weaknesses now, don't they, Mr. Prosecutor? This one seems like trouble. Okay, Mr. Wright, he's all yours. The job was to keep a wary eye on that bone orchard.
How exactly did you keep an eye on the evidence room?
Just made sure nothing moved in the security camera monitor. That room's so still. Even time dies in there. It's just a caretaker who
Interred
the recordings.
You interred them?
Videos of nothing that aren't useful. When the time would come, I'd erase the tape.
If nothing unusual is recorded, the tapes are to be erased every 6 hours.
Each time I'd erase a tape, it felt like I was erasing a part of my life.
This guy has a flair for the dramatic, but it isn't going to do him any good. So, in actuality, you don't physically enter the evidence room? How much of Marshall's beard hairs are on the floor at this point? Most of them, probably.
Said I was supposed to make the rounds 3 times a day, but that ain't my style.
Do you work an 18-hour workday, Marshall? But you made your rounds on the day of the crime, right?
Ain't you heard a word I said, partner? Told you that ain't my style.
I'm afraid I don't understand.
No desperado I know lets rules get in his way.
The desperados I know joined the police force.
So, Officer Marshall, on the day of the crime, it's between you and me, I didn't set foot in the evidence room that day. There's a rubber glove stuck in the victim's locker. Do you know anything about that? Sorry, partner, can't say I do. Haven't been in that crypt in weeks.
How does this guy avoid being fired?
Besides, the room's protected by 2 security systems anyway.
You used to be a detective, so you've used the evidence room in the past, correct?
Of course, back in the day, my locker was a goldmine of evidence.
And yet, you didn't know about the fingerprint locking mechanism.
Sorry, partner, I ain't good with machines. Couldn't even tell you how a back works.
That's quite incredible.
The sensors on the locker handles cannot be seen. It's well known that some detectives are unaware of their presence.
Now that he mentions it, Detective Gumshoe said something like that too.
At any rate, it doesn't seem that this is relevant to the crime. You tell us what you were doing when the crime took place. If I remember right, I was at the street-side saloon at the time when it went down.
What were you doing in a place like that?
I was eating spaghetti. Not even Angel Steak lunches can beat that parlor's
Von Gol Sepia pasta?
You mean to tell us you abandoned your police duties to eat some noodles? Not at all. Not all desperados eat tacos, partner. It's not what I meant. I hope that this has at least taught you a lesson.
That's strange. This is usually where Edgeworth says, Did you not want to raise this year?
I'm just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time I hit the trail.
Out of ammo? Officer Marshall?
That's right, partner, or as you'd call it, evidence. If you plan to pin me to this crime, then you better draw. Otherwise, you're just wasting my time.
Marshall, you're shit at your job. Yeah.
A steel horse is waiting to carry me back to the west into the sunset, or back west into the sunset.
He's a cowboy. On a steel horse he rides.
One thing seems clear. Despite being responsible for guarding the evidence room, the witness doesn't appear to have seen anything. Texans don't take orders from anyone. Everyone knows that.
Apparently your superiors don't. Okay, I have a trump card up my sleeve, so I'd best keep my cool. Before I use it, though, I'd better up the ante. I didn't mean to press that. Okay, AI-16 is written on the tag. That means it has nothing to do with the current case. So, technically speaking, this is a contradiction because there is a third thing. Why can I check that? Technically speaking, this is a contradiction, but, I don't think that this will count. Yeah.
See, this seems like it's most primed to have a contradiction. Oh, okay. Officer Marshall, doesn't it strike you as odd? That is, you being called in to testify like this. After all, you weren't in the security room at the time of the crime. And yet you dragged me down here. Explain yourself, partner. It's quite simple. You left a very large trail behind at the scene. Or to be exact, a handprint. This is real good, partner. Like I said, I'm the caretaker of that crypt. Pay my respects. That is, take my rounds once a month. It's only natural my fingerprints would be in there. I only wish it were, officer. But you see, your fingerprints were covered in blood. Witness, what is the meaning of this? Bloodstained fingerprints were at the scene of, or at the crime scene. The blood was wiped away, however. A luminol test clearly revealed this. Well, Officer Marshall? Seems to me, there ain't a person in this room with a head on its shoulders.
I take it you have an explanation then, Officer Marshall. About the blood-stained fingerprints.
Very well, you may begin your testimony about your fingerprints. Under the scene of the crime. Like I said, it's only natural for my fingerprints to be in that evidence room. One of them just happened to be at the same place as the blood-stained handprint. Murderer touched the locker where my fingerprint was by chance. Bloodstain and the fingerprint are completely unrelated. Or didn't you know the murderer was wearing gloves? See? Had nothing to do with it. The witness's explanation appears valid. Although there's room for doubt. Life wouldn't be fun without any doubt, partner. The defense may now cross-examine the witness.
This guy's hiding something. I can feel it. Now's my chance to prove it.
Like I said, it's only natural for my fingerprints to be in that evidence room.
That's because you... How did you put it? Pay your respects once a month?
Yeah, that's right. That and one more thing. That locker happens to be mine. What? What do you mean? I mean what I said. That's the locker I used when I was a detective. The locker I still use. All that's in there now, though, is a heap of broken dreams.
I see.
It'd be strange if my prints weren't all over that locker.
Apparently his fingerprint data was never removed from that locker's programming. He must have been using the fingerprint lock all this time without ever knowing it.
One of them just happened to be in the same place as the blood-stained handprint.
So then, what about the bloody handprint?
Wasn't mine. It's no mystery. Just explain. The locker's covered in with my fingerprints. Just so happened. Murderer touched the locker where my fingerprint was by chance.
The chances of that happening are 1,000,000 to 1.
On the contrary, no one could argue the opposite, or one could argue the opposite. Chances of that not happening are 1,000,000 to 1. Get one thing straight, partner. You ain't gonna get no reward from me with a mere fingerprint. You wanna know why? Bloodstain and the fingerprint are completely unrelated.
Unrelated?
They're as different as night and day. Kinda like cereal and cereal. One's got to do with breakfast, while the other's a type of murder. That's right. Although seemingly alike, they're totally different.
I don't see what homonyms have to do with this.
Or didn't you know the murderer was wearing gloves?
How do you know that?
Maybe a loner, but I still do my job. Keep up on the reports.
There is a blood stain at the scene, though, or thought to be left by the murderer. That's right.
It was found on Detective Gumshoe's locker.
However, no fingerprints were detected on that handprint.
Yeah, I think we tried that too. So that would mean murderer wearing gloves happened to place their hand on top of Officer Marshall's hand fingerprint. It's the only logical conclusion. Starting to get the picture, partner?
The picture?
This seal of blood in the desert, it's just food for buzzards. There's only one reality, and it's this.
The security tape.
As long as my trail isn't in there, you can't say otherwise. Isn't getting us anywhere, Mr. Wright. Please consider carefully where you're going with this cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Well then, continue your testimony, Officer Marshall. Too bad it wasn't me in that video, right, partner?
What do you mean by that?
You want to tie me to this crime, isn't that right, partner? If so, that video is the only direct evidence you have.
But that video is next to useless. It's full of blind spots.
Blind spots?
Places you can't see. Camera's panning back and forth. The floor isn't shown. If someone was familiar with the camera's position, they could leave their room without being caught on tape. We don't have time for your speculations, Mr. Wright.
Well, Mr. Wright, you can show us evidence in this video that indicates Officer Marshall is present. Please do so now. No evidence.
Very well. Allow me to point out your mistake, Officer Marshall. Tread carefully, Mr. Wright, or you might wind up being the one making the mistake.
Now then, let's have another look at the video. Show us this incriminating evidence of...
Wow, why does those text boxes skip so fast? What the hell?
Shows this incriminating evidence of the witness, Officer Jake Marshall. It's a...
I didn't press that.
Got carried away, we forgive him, he's not a bad man, he's just disillusioned. Of course, I'm not one to gun down on armed boys.
Oh great, now Edgeworth is defending me. So that means I missed the mark. I thought that X was the fast forward button. I thought that X was the fast forward button, so I pressed it like preemptively to start fast forwarding, and very clearly it was not the fast forward button. A is the fast forward button. Bringing our attention back to the security camera is a mistake I'm afraid you'll soon not forget, Officer Marshall.
Days are short in Texas, and so are our tempers. You sum up what you have to say in 8 words or less.
Very well. You can clearly be seen in this video.
Exactly 8 words. Not bad, partner.
The key lies in a certain locker shown in the video.
The locker with the white cloth sticking out? That was the witnesses, I believe.
Now then, let's rewind the video a bit. At normal speed, because we can't fast forward this for some reason.
Honestly, the fast forward speed should have just been the normal speed of the video. Oh, white cloth. It's gone. What's the meaning of this, Officer Marshall? When the crime took place, the white cloth wasn't there. Then, it suddenly appeared. There's only one explanation. Officer Marshall, you were in the evidence room at the time of the crime. What's more, you opened your locker when the camera was turned away. Order, order. It would seem that... Hold your horses. Sorry, partner, but you got the wrong man. So what if my locker was open? That doesn't mean I'm the one who opened it. Murderer needed to hide something, so he opened a locker and stuck it in. It's not my fault he happened to choose mine. Why is everyone staring at me like I'm a wanted man? This guy isn't just playing dumb. He really doesn't know. He lacks critical information. I hate to rain on your parade, but you're the only person who can open that particular locker. Oh yeah? I call your bluff. You say I opened that locker, now prove it. Fingerprint sensor? We talked about this earlier today. Lockers can only be opened by the detectives they belong to. What kind of crazy talk is this? Well, Detective Gumshoe did mention something about this, despite the fact that we talked about it earlier today. In any case, locks aren't that obvious. There's even some people on the force that don't know about the fingerprint locks. So, Sheriff, what do you have to say, in 8 words or less? I only got 1 word for you, partner. No! Yeah, we talked about it earlier in the testimony, too. It wasn't even like, well, he wasn't here that we talked about it. Order, order, order. Witness, explain yourself. This is a joke. This is the worst I've ever heard. I assure you, this is no joke, Officer Marshall. Now then, please tell us what you were doing in the evidence room at the time of the crime. That's a very weird place to put an Olay. Olay, please answer the question. What is he now, a bullfighter? That's alright, Officer Marshall. I believe we can figure the rest out from here. We can? Have a look at these floor plans. There's no place for someone to hide in the evidence room. Yet Officer Meekins didn't see Officer Marshall. But so then, where was the witness?
It seems Mr. Wright has an answer.
It's right. The only possible conclusion. Well then, let's hear it. Where was Officer Marshall at the time of the crime? Officer Marshall was standing right here. There? That's where the victim, Detective Goodman, was. Correct. Unless the man wasn't Detective Goodman. I believe the victim in the video is Officer Marshall. It was you, dressed up like Detective Goodman.
But that's preposterous. Officer Meekins witnessed the detective at this crime scene. Once he saw the man's face, he'd know for sure.
May I point out, though, that Officer Meekins did not know Detective Goodman. He also testified about the man's reaction when confronted.
When I entered the evidence room, I asked him to show his card, sir.
Yes, and how did Detective Goodman respond?
He suddenly pulled a knife on me.
Something about the officer's story puzzled me. If the man had his ID card, why didn't he just show it? Yes, he would have needed it to enter the evidence room, but he must have been carrying it. The answer is simple. He couldn't show it. As you can see, Detective Goodman's picture is on his ID card. Oh, I get it. If he showed that,
his cover would have been blown. Officer Meekins would have realized the man wasn't Detective Goodman. Do you have anything to say to this, Officer Marshall?
You got quite an imagination, partner. Got a term for that. It's called circumstantial evidence.
Circumstantial evidence? Still denying it?
You're gonna have to do better than that to break a detective. Unless you have hard evidence proving I dressed up as the victim. Can't say I particularly care for your uncooperative disposition. Can't say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining. Well, Mr. Wright, do you have any evidence proving beyond a shadow of a doubt Officer Marshall dressed up as the victim?
Well, who am I kidding? I don't have anything like that.
I can see the fear in your eyes, partner. Seems you're the one who couldn't take the desert heat.
Ugh, this can't be happening. It's so obvious he's the one. What can I do? It looks like your lack of experience has finally been exposed. I'll pass on to you what someone told me when I was just starting out. When you run into a wall with no place to go, return to the basics. The basics? For me, that would be what Mia used to tell me. Phoenix, try thinking outside the box. I shouldn't look for proof that Officer Marshall was in disguise. But rather, I should look for evidence that came about because he was in disguise. Why do you think this locker was opened in the first place?
What do you mean?
There's no reason for Officer Marshall to open his locker at the time of the crime. Yet he did, despite the chance it might have been discovered later, as it has been. Which means he didn't originally plan to open his locker.
According to the defendant's argument, Officer Jake Marshall dressed up as Detective Goodman at the time of the crime. Then, after the crime was committed, he opened his own locker for some unknown reason.
The fact that a white cloth is sticking out of the locker seems to indicate that he opened it in order to put the cloth inside.
So what exactly is this piece of cloth?
Perhaps the video is the key to all of our unanswered questions. Let's watch it for the 5th time. I don't have any evidence, so this video is my only shot.
Very well, let's take another look at the security tape. After committing the crime, the witness opened the locker and put away the white cloth. Please show us why the witness had to open his locker.
I pressed X to fast forward again. I'm taking so many dumb penalties. Judge is also getting tired of this video. Why would you put fast forward on A? For some reason, you disguised yourself as Detective Goodman and entered the evidence room, though I don't know to what end yet. However, something unexpected happened. Officer Meekins barged in on you. When asked to show your ID card, you pulled a knife on him. However, Officer Meekins panicked, and the white coat you were wearing was soiled with blood.
Bloody white coat?
You couldn't just walk out like that, so you hid the coat in your locker.
Not bad, partner. Now then, Officer Marshall, are you ready to tell us the truth? Looks like I underestimated y'all. Hope you're happy now, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago. You were only half as persistent then as you are today. We all wouldn't have to be here now, would we?
Officer Marshall, tell the court what you did. All of it.
All right. Seems the time has come. I had to do it that day. I couldn't just stand by and let it die. Stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. I planned to take out the evidence. I wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. I knocked him out. Managed to escape. I knew which areas wouldn't be caught on the camera. There wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15. Supposed victim was really you.
But there's one thing I still don't understand. Traces of a large quantity of blood were found on the floor of the evidence room. If no one was murdered, then how could that be?
Officer Meekins managed to cut his own hand. I guess as he's the donor.
It was way too much blood for such a small donation.
I had to do it that day. Couldn't just stand by and let it die.
When you say it, you mean...
You even have to ask, partner?
SL9 incident. 2 years have passed since that case was closed. It was going to completely end with the transferal that day.
Not if I had anything to do with it. That incident's not over.
But what did you hope to accomplish by sneaking into the evidence room?
The case is closed, only that case's lead detective can look through the evidence. I wanted to have a look at it myself one more time. No matter what the cost. I don't care what anyone says, partner. That case is mine.
But Officer Marshall wasn't in charge of that investigation. Why does he care so much about it?
That day was my last chance. That's why I stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. Planned to take out the evidence.
Why did you disguise yourself as Detective Goodman?
If I didn't make it look like Goodman was carrying out the evidence transferal, I'd be arrested for stealing evidence, which wouldn't get me anywhere.
So you did it to fool the security camera.
And the detective's ID card? I stole that the morning of the incident.
So that really was why Goodman started filling out that lost item report.
I returned his ID card. Left it on the floor of the prosecutor's office parking lot.
The ID card I found was left there by Officer Marshall? So, essentially, you managed to succeed despite your lack of foresight.
What do you mean, partner?
I mean the fingerprint-activated lock, of course. No matter how well you disguise yourself, you can't change your fingerprints. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't have been able to open that locker yourself. But he could because of a rubber glove that just happened to get stuck in the door. That means Detective Goodman must have opened the locker before Officer Marshall.
Wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. Knocked him out.
You pulled a knife on Officer Meekins and tried to drive him off?
Let's just say I was a little surprised. I only planned on being in the evidence room for no more than 5 minutes. Didn't think anyone would actually come in during that short time. Officer Meekins certainly is a 1 in a million type of person. Mistaking a detective for an intruder and demanding to be shown his ID.
I'll have to think a little more about his raise this year. When did Edgeworth get so much influence?
Anyway, he threw himself at me and I ended up cutting him slightly. Sorry I had to turn out that way. With me knocking him out and everything.
By the way, what happened to your knife?
Oh, you mean this one?
I don't know what to say.
So you knocked Officer Meekins out and managed to escape. I knew which areas wouldn't be caught on camera.
So you did your research beforehand.
Those who go in the desert unprepared won't live long, partner. Didn't think it would make a difference, though. Security tape is erased every 6 hours. If all had gone as planned, no footage would have been left.
However, you bloodied your coat in your struggle with Officer Meekins.
Someone was in the security room when I came out, the jig would have been up. Opened my locker and stashed it in there.
What was Officer Meekins doing during that time? Or where was he?
Oh, what else? He was sleeping like a baby. So what you're saying is, on that day, there wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15.
But the blood found at the scene certainly indicates a crime took place.
What are you, blind? The victim shown on that tape is me, and I'm not dead yet, partner.
So you stole the evidence from the locker?
Actually, no, I didn't.
Why not?
When I opened the locker, the evidence was already gone.
What?
Mr. Edgeworth, where's that evidence?
It's still missing, Your Honor.
Detective Goodman's locker was already empty. Someone else stole the evidence.
Officer Marshall, may I ask you one thing?
Fire away, partner. It's free country. Just remember, I'm also free to decide whether or not to answer.
Why did you do this? Stealing a detective's ID, injuring a police officer? This is no small offense. Moreover, you're an officer yourself. This will have serious consequences. It can't just be forgiven with a simple cut in salary.
Not that salary cuts are ever a valid solution.
Like I said, this isn't your case. This one's mine. And I'll do anything it takes to get an answer I'm satisfied with. Witness has an unusual amount of zeal. Let's hear more. Can't just forget the SL9 incident. You know why?
But that case was solved 2 years ago, wasn't it?
It's the reason the evidence was stored in the evidence room.
Joe Dark was convicted for his crimes. One thing I can say for sure is he deserved his sentence.
I remember the Joe Dark case. It involved serial murders, didn't it? I don't intend to complain about how it turned out. There's something that still bothers me. Something went down at that trial. Something no one will talk about. What happened? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out.
Why is he so concerned with that incident? Maybe I should present him what I think his real reason is? I had a feeling we would wind up here sooner or later. Everyone involved here is related in some way to that case. I'd better take another look at the files. Victims, Neil Marshall. Officer Marshall, I think I understand. I think I know why you care so much about the SL9 incident.
Sounds like you've been sipping too much cactus juice, partner.
I have the SL9 incident file here. The name, Marshall, is mentioned here. In a list of murder victims, Neil Marshall. Are you related to this man?
Neil Marshall.
Yeah. Sure you've heard the name. 2 years ago. He received the same lousy prosecutor award you got.
What? Prosecutor? You must be talking about the King of Prosecutors award.
Now I remember. Prosecutor Neil Marshall. He handled the SL9 case before I did.
That's right. He was killed, and the case fell into your hands. What is his relation to you? He was my brother.
Okay, so that's Hare.
He was investigating the murders with Damon Gant, then Deputy Chief of Police. The group of detectives I was part of worked under them. We're desperate to prosecute the killer. Joe Dark. My brother fought Dark and was killed. That was the first time Dark left behind any evidence. That's all we needed. He was a Ray. I don't know that word. I legit, like, I've played through a decent amount of this case and I don't remember this word at all. Arraigned? That's my guess. He was arraigned and incarcerated. Case was finally closed. At least according to the public records. What do you mean? Brother couldn't have been killed by Joe Dark. I knew my brother better than anyone. No one could have beaten him in a fight.
And that's it. That's your reason for your insane actions.
There's more to my brother's death than what the records say. No matter how much you try to hide it, you can't fool me. Well, at least one thing's for certain. Now we know what happened to the police department on the day of the crime.
That was the last day the SL9 case could be reopened. Not satisfied with its resolution, Officer Marshall planned to steal the evidence.
Disguising himself as Detective Goodman, he entered the evidence room. Officer Meekins confronted him, so he rendered him unconscious and fled.
Yes, this mystery has finally been cleared up. No murder took place at the police department that day.
Thank God we don't have to check the video again, yeah.
The things that happened by chance never ceased to amaze. At exactly the same time as the murder at the prosecutor's office, this fake murder was going on at the police department.
Chance. It's gotta be more than just that. No one was murdered at the police department on the day of the crime. That means the murder in the prosecutor's office parking lot was the real one.
Which in turn means only one person could have committed the crime. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye.
But wait, a verdict wasn't reached in yesterday's trial.
Which is why we examined the incident at the police department today.
Yeah,
but there's only one reason the defendant was not convicted yesterday. There yet remained the mystery of the simultaneous murder at the police department.
It seems to me, boys got the draw on you, partner.
All the mysteries at the police department have been resolved, no doubt about it. Our sole murder took place at the prosecutor's office. The only suspect is Lana Skye. And the testimony of one Miss Angel Starr is completely uncontestable.
Yeah, as if you can still use that testimony because she was lying out her ass the whole time.
If you have a response, make it a single word or less.
Ah!
I rest my case.
Seems this trial has reached its conclusion. There is no room for doubt.
Well done, Mr. Wright. Thanks to you, I didn't need to waste my time disproving the alleged murder at the police department.
There's no doubt what I proved today is true. The apparent murder on the security camera's tape really was fake. But I didn't realize that would end up proving Lana guilty. Now then, the time for the verdict has arrived. This court finds the defendant...
Hold it. Your Honor, wait.
Emma?
The defense has an objection. A scientific objection. Right?
What do you mean, right? Mr. Wright? You're this girl's guardian. Your Honor? Oh, in a sense.
Please, Your Honor, all I'm asking is for a minute of your time. Please hear me out. Mr. Edgeworth, please.
I don't want to leave any loose ends. You want a minute? I'll give you 3. I was kind of in shock. I mean, finding out the SL9 incident referred to the Joe Dark killings?
Now that she mentions it, the names of both Sky Sisters were in that file.
But that's when I figured it out. I mean, what Officer Marshall was trying to do that day. So I knew. His fingerprint had nothing to do with the crime. That left only one thing, the other handprint.
You mean the traces of blood you found on Detective Gumshoe's locker? But no fingerprints were found on it, right?
No, but I figured if I examined it scientifically, I'd be sure to find a clue. So I ran over there and looked at it again.
So did you find something?
No.
Huh?
Sorry, I guess I'm not that much of a scientific investigator after all.
Is that all?
Please don't be mad. I'm just a high school student.
I'm just an attorney.
But Mr. Wright, those traces of blood are the only clue we have. If we can't find something wrong with them... Please, Mr. Wright, you're a professional. If anyone can save Lana, it's you.
Me? Oh boy. Time's up. Now then, Mr. Wright. With regard to the incident at the police department, any reasonable doubt remain?
It appears the defense is troubled by the other blood mark. Looking at the floor plans, the handprint was discovered around here. Is there a problem with this? Mr. Wright, I'm sorry I can't be of more use. But still, if you can't find anything wrong with that blood mark, Lana will be...
Please answer my question, Mr. Wright. We don't have all day. Yes, Your Honor. If ever I've needed to concentrate, it's now. What could be wrong with that handprint on Detective Gumshoe's locker? Would there be something I'm missing? Confidence save. This handprint left at the crime scene clearly shows a contradiction.
The only thing that seems clear is your grasping, Mr. Wright.
You've been staring pretty intently at those floor plans. Tell me, is there a problem with them? Yes, this is strange. Take a good look at these floor plans. Something is missing.
Missing? You mean something hasn't been drawn on there?
Yes, something that when drawn will completely change the meaning of this blood mark. Let's pray the defense isn't simply trying to buy time. Very well, Mr. Wright. With all this evidence here, there's gotta be something I can use. The question is, which item can prove something is missing in the floor plans? It's videotape again, I think. As they say back west, even a blind man can hit with buckshot. That is, so long as he's facing the general direction.
It seems Mr. Wright's not sure which direction to face.
It's no use. The more evidence there is, the greater the chance of me being wrong.
Just calm down, Mr. Wright. Try and remember what the evidence room was like on the day of the crime.
What is it that bothers me about this blood mark? Please allow me another chance, Your Honor. I'll prove it this time. Just pray the defense isn't simply trying to buy time, yep. Okay. What about that piece of plywood? The Blue Badger, mascot of the police force. Defender of truth, guardian of proof.
Explain yourself, Wright.
Please look at the floor plans of the crime scene. The Blue Badger is not there. So watch what happens when we put him in. This is where he was dancing at the time of the crime. Well, what?
That's right. So long as the blue badger is dancing here, it would be impossible to place a handprint at this spot on the locker.
What? That's not your voice. What? I keep slipping into judge when I do what. So that means, what exactly does that mean?
It means it can't be done.
What are you saying? Blood traces were undeniably found on that locker.
Don't look at me. I didn't put it there.
Mr. Wright, think it through more scientifically.
Emma?
On that afternoon, Officer Meekins was the one who brought the blue badger to the evidence room, right? After he put it down, it would be impossible to leave a handprint on the locker.
So that must mean this blood mark was left there before the blue badger was brought in.
Just one moment. I will not allow such far-fetched balderdash in my courtroom.
It may sound far-fetched, Your Honor, but it's the only possible explanation. On February 21st, in the police department's evidence room, blood was spilled not once, but twice. But how? One time was captured on this tape, taken by the security camera. Officer Meekins cut his hand, from which a trivial amount of blood fell. Problem is, the other time. Someone bled prior to the struggle shown in this tape. It had to have been Detective Goodman when he was really murdered. That's ridiculous. I refuse to accept your absurd claim. The murder portrayed in the security tape has been proven to be a fake. However, that does not explain the blood mark found on the locker. So then, assuming this murder you purport really happened, when did it take place? I demand you show evidence that proves when it occurred. When did the first incident occur?
To summarize, the defense claims that prior to Officer Meekins being cut by Jake Marshall, who was posing as Detective Goodman, another incident took place in that evidence room.
That's right. The blood mark on the locker proves this.
Very well, then tell us. When did this first incident occur? As Mr. Edgeworth said, proof must be presented.
Proof that shows when the murder took place. There's only one piece of evidence that can show that.
So then, will the defense please present its evidence? What shows when the first crime took place?
If the crime took place inside the evidence room, then the killer would have had to enter it. And in order to do so, an ID card would have been required.
ID card? Oh, ID card record.
Officer Meekins brought the Blue Badger panel to the evidence room at,
see here, 4:50 p.m.
If the crime took place before that time, then it would be
4:40 p.m. Miles Edgeworth, just what have you done? Never would have figured you'd have the nerve, boy.
Drop the act, witness. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure out it couldn't have been me.
Nope, I ain't getting it. I'm afraid I don't understand either.
It's clear from the luminal test that blood was there. However, when the second crime took place, both Officer Meekins and Officer Marshall failed to notice the blood. That means the blood from the first crime was wiped away by the real murderer. I would have had just 10 minutes to murder the victim, carry his body away, and clean up the blood. Unfortunately, that's physically impossible.
That would mean the crime must have taken place before Mr. Edgeworth entered the evidence room.
Let's look at the chart again. There's only one other card remaining. 7777777.
Talk about a lucky number. Wait, this doesn't make sense. How could Detective Goodman have entered the evidence room?
Since there's no record of his card being used beforehand, he must have entered along with the real murderer. That's the only plausible explanation. He went in with 7777777.
Mr. Edgeworth, please look into this ASAP. Find out whose ID number is...
That's 17 too many, Your Honor. Unfortunately, I'm unable to look up the owner of that ID card. At least, at present.
What? Explain yourself, son.
The ID number, 7777777, belongs to someone with a rank of captain or higher. Someone who is a so-called executive officer. We don't have the authority to inquire into such a person's identity.
But that's ridiculous. Just how...
I'm not finished talking, Mr. Wright. There's one situation in which we can be granted such authority.
If an official charge is filed against an executive is accepted. An official charge. You're all alike, aren't you? Your cover-ups and your forgeries. That's how that's how the prosecutor's office operates.
I take pride in my work, Officer Marshall. I would appreciate it if you would keep your slander to yourself.
Slander, is it? Okay, let me ask a question.
Yes.
No, not you. To her, the defendant sitting over there. Your own little executive. Lana?
Don't be stupid. She's been charged with murder. Of course, we've looked up her ID number, and it's not 7777777.
Don't play me for a fool, partner. That's not what I want to ask. All I want to know is one thing about that incident. Yes, a line incident. Answer me this, Chief Prosecutor. In that trial 2 years ago, did you really only use legitimate evidence?
Do you need the witness to repeat his question, Chief Prosecutor?
I heard him fine, Mr. Edgeworth.
2 years ago, I was in charge of the prosecution for that trial. At the time,
Occasionally, we felt the powerlessness of the law. At least, I did. Lana! I became a prosecutor in order to suppress crime with the law. But before I realized it, we were the ones being suppressed by the law.
Defendant, what are you saying? I'll ask you again, Chief Prosecutor. During that trial 2 years ago, did you really present all the evidence in court? Can you look me, an investigator in that crime, in the eye and say that you did? Chief Prosecutor, you didn't.
I don't have to, Officer Marshall.
Why won't you answer him?
Drastic crimes require drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to, in order for him to get the verdict he deserved. But, Lana! Even if it involved forging evidence.
See? That's what I'm talking about.
No. No!
Order, order, order!
Lana's remarks caused such a stir. The chaos in the courtroom could not be quelled. The conclusion of the trial would have to wait until the following day.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Wright. I'm sorry for what my sister said. Drastic crimes require drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to in order for him to get the verdict he deserved.
didn't know. I never knew that the SL9 incident was just another name for the Joe Dark killings.
Sounds like everyone's heard about these killings but me.
Lana wanted Dark convicted so badly. That's why she used me. That's why she used what happened to me.
What do you mean, what happened to you?
It's all there in the file. Joe Dark's last victim was Prosecutor Neil Marshall. When he murdered Officer Marshall's brother, he left behind an incriminating piece of evidence.
But what did you have to do with those killings, Emma?
On the night Prosecutor Neil Marshall was murdered, Joe Dark tried to kill me.
What? He tried to kill you?
Officer Marshall's brother, Neil, was only trying to save me.
So that means you...
Yes. I was a witness in the Joe Dark trial.
Didn't see that one coming. I'm sorry, Emma, but we must examine Charlie. He is Plant Charlie. Taking care of him in Maya's absence. Huh? Looks a little yellow today.
Oh, I watered him just now. I mixed in a lot, too.
Mixed in? What?
Why, my very own scientific additive. Well, Charlie, you like it?
I told you, he's turning yellow. There's a poster of the Steel Samurai on the wall. Maya stuck it up here the day that she left. I didn't have the heart to take it down. I do sometimes get strange looks from the clients, though.
It happened 2 years ago. It was right about this time of the year, too. There was a terrible thunderstorm that day, unusual for the season. I was alone in my sister's office. We were planning to eat dinner together once she finished her work. Then suddenly, this terrifying man came bursting into the office.
Oh, Dark.
It seemed like he was running from someone, pulled out a knife and screamed at me. I didn't know what was going on. Just then, Prosecutor Marshall showed up.
Jake Marshall's brother.
Joe Dark tried to take me hostage, but before he could, Mr. Marshall tackled him. Then...
What happened?
I'll never forget it. Lightning struck, and the lights went out suddenly. A bolt of lightning flashed outside the window, lighting up the office for an instant. What I saw then burned a permanent picture in my mind. I can still see it now.
Permanent picture?
I don't remember the moment when Dark stabbed Mr. Marshall.
So you weren't able to testify about that?
No, I was only asked about when I was attacked. That must be why she made up the crime.
Made it up? You mean provided bogus evidence?
The prosecutor's office wanted that guilty verdict so badly. Lana forged evidence and Mr. Edgeworth used it.
Edgeworth?
Yes, but I'm sure he didn't know anything about it. He couldn't have known he was being given false evidence. Even so, that's when it all started. The rumors about Mr. Edgeworth, it's all my fault. If I could have just testified properly, none of this would have happened.
So it's true. Even though he may not have known it, Edgeworth really was involved in falsifying evidence.
After that case ended, Lana was never the same. She became cold, like she is today.
She must not have been able to face up to what she did, especially not to Emma. What did you see in the instant that crime occurred?
Dark knocked down Mr. Marshall and raised his knife.
No, Marshall was stabbed right in front of this poor girl?
I don't remember what happened after that. Apparently I passed out. When I came to, Lana was cradling me in her arms.
Poor Emma. Been through so much.
I couldn't bring myself to testify about that instant. I tried, but the words just wouldn't come out. I drew a picture, but it wasn't any good.
2 years ago. You must have been 14. It's understandable.
Once it was all over, I made up my mind. I decided that when I grew up, I'd become a scientific investigator. I want to be able to fight crime with my testimonies, and find evidence to make an airtight case. That way, Lana would never have to forge any.
I see. I think I'm finally starting to understand what makes Emma tick. There's still something that bothers me about that crime. There's something that's puzzling me, Emma.
What is it?
You said you were in Lana's office at the time, right?
That's right.
Why then would a serial killer come running in there? Not only that, but he was being chased by a prosecutor?
Oh, there's no mystery there. Joe Dark had been taken in for questioning that day.
Taken in for questioning? You mean by the police?
Of course. This happened at the police department. He tried to run away halfway through the interview and fled into my sister's office.
Why did he run all the way over to your sister's office?
Because the detective's offices and the questioning room are right across from the elevator.
Across from the elevator? But Lana was the chief prosecutor, wasn't she?
No, silly. Didn't I tell you? 2 years ago, Lana was a detective. She was the best in the entire force.
What? That's news to me.
After the Joe Dark case, she was transferred to the prosecutor's office and made chief prosecutor.
Lana used to be a detective. Better have another talk with her.
Lana. Mr. Wright, it seems I keep causing you trouble.
Falsifying evidence? I didn't think you were the type.
Criminals don't mind playing foul. Why should we? But, Lana, if you're wrong, an innocent person might be found guilty. Believe me, I understand the risks.
Lana, Emma told me about you.
Oh?
About how you were a detective 2 years ago, and how the SL9 incident was the reason for your transfer to the prosecutor's office.
That's right.
Could you fill me in on the details, especially about the unusual change of jobs?
I suppose you have a right to know, Mr. Wright.
A lot of revelations were uncovered at the trial today, not the least of which is the fact that this case is largely connected to another one 2 years ago.
Evidence from that case was stolen as well, though I expected as much. I know how obsessive Officer Marshall can be. That trial, it really wasn't fair, was it? I believed in you, Lana. I believed that no matter what happened, you'd always stick to the truth. It couldn't be helped, Emma. At that trial 2 years ago, I sold my soul.
Well, all drama aside, the fact of the matter is, at 5:15, there was no murder at the police department.
Tell me it's not true, Lana, what the witness, Miss Starr, said. About you stabbing Mr. Goodman with a knife? Lana, I don't understand. Why won't you tell us? Emma, this doesn't involve just me.
I don't think I've ever seen Lana look so fazed before.
It's true. I was a member of the police force 2 years ago. She was amazing. They still talk about all the cases she and Chief Gant cracked together.
Chief Gant?
He was the deputy chief of police back then, but he still worked on the crime scenes. Damon Gant. He was everything I aspired to be. They were the best team ever! They solved crimes before the reports could even be filed. Emma really idolizes her big sister. But now you're chief prosecutor. What happened? I always planned on becoming a prosecutor. The reason I became a detective was
To gain experience investigating crime scenes, so you could use that experience in court, right?
Can't help.
Sorry, give me a sec.
Gant's help in the SL9 incident was crucial to its resolution. After that, he became chief of police and arranged my transfer to the prosecutor's office.
Maybe I should ask more about this investigation of theirs 2 years ago.
2 years ago, I was second in command of the detectives investigating Dark.
Second in command? That means the investigation was led by Damon Gant, right?
Yes. Deputy Chief Gant and I shared the same office and the same investigations.
And had the same office?
We led a team of the best detectives on the force. Detective Goodman, whose case it was, Jake Marshall, and Angel Starr. It was the first time Marshall worked with his brother. He was quite gung-ho. Without a doubt, Joe Dark was the serial killer. We asked him to come in for questioning. We were desperate for evidence. That was where his final murder took place.
He tried to murder Emma.
Prosecutor Marshall was trying to save me from Dark. You see, the first person who happened upon the scene of the crime was me.
Now you tell us.
Damon Gant and Neil Marshall were the ones questioning Dark that day. The investigation was in its final stages, and Dark must have suddenly panicked. So we waited until Gant and Marshall let their guards down and fled the room. From there, he ran straight to the office shared by Deputy Chief Gant and myself. That's where he found me.
So you were the first person to run to the scene, Lana.
It appears so. I was filing some papers while Gant and Marshall were questioning Dark. When I returned to my office, I saw 3 bodies on the floor and smelled blood.
3 bodies?
Prosecutor Marshall, the victim, and Emma, who had passed out. And the suspect, Joe Dark. During the struggle, it seems Mr. Marshall struck the final blow before he died. Joe Dark had incurred a minor concussion and lay unconscious.
What did you do?
To be honest, I panicked. I picked up Emma, carried her out of the room, and just held her.
Can't blame her after all. Can't blame her. After all, her sister must have gone through.
After that, I placed Dark under immediate arrest.
Let me get this straight. You were all involved in the SL9 incident.
That's right. Quite a coincidence,
I don't buy it.
What are you saying?
There's no way everyone involved in this trial was also involved in that incident. Just by chance.
But that case was solved 2 years ago.
At least one person went to extremes because they didn't believe it was truly solved.
Officer Marshall. Yes, his actions came as a surprise to me as well. Ever since his brother died, he's changed completely. I guess he wasn't convinced with the ruling against Joe Dark. Life doesn't end with the closing of a case. Everyone has to live the rest of their lives with their memories.
That case just might not be over yet. Emma was assaulted by Dark at the police department, right?
Yes, in the office that Damon Gant and I shared. The office that Mr. Gant now occupies by himself. Chief's office.
Maybe we should have a look at the Chief's office. Site of the final SL9 murder. I'm an attorney.
Attorneys and prosecutors have no business showing evidence outside of court. It's taboo, especially when the interests of both parties are involved. He really means it.
Lana,
That's not evidence. That's my badge. I'm saying that I killed someone with this badge. I don't see Detective Gumshoe anywhere.
things seem kind of quiet around here today.
You're right. Chief of Detectives seems the same, though.
Why don't I go look for some other people to talk to?
Right. We can come back here later. Howdy, Bambina.
Oh, Mr. Marshall.
Never thought things would turn out this way when I woke up this morning. How's that pronounced? It's K Sarah? Never know where life will lead you to, eh, Bambina? Should've known my luck had just run out when old Billy dried up this morning.
Billy?
Must be his pet cactus.
Say, where are you headed?
Just over to the prosecutor's office for a little interrogation. It's a voluntary appearance, but we all know I won't be coming back. Sorry, but you can't go in the evidence room today, partner.
But, Mr. Marshall, why do you do it?
Why do prospectors head west? If ever there was a case I needed to know the truth about, it was this one.
Before you turn yourself in, Mr. Marshall, would you mind telling us exactly what happened?
Looks like I won't be getting a steak lunch today. Someone was fishy about that trial from the beginning. It wasn't just me either. All the detectives thought so.
What do you mean, fishy?
Some of the facts reported were inconsistent with the evidence we found. For example, murder weapon.
Murder weapon? You mean that switchblade knife with the broken tip?
That was Joe Dark's all right. But in the initial autopsy report, a question was raised.
A question?
The blade of the knife was not a perfect match with the wound the victim sustained.
What does that mean?
Means there's a good chance the knife was not the murder weapon. However, in the report that was finally submitted, that possibility had been erased.
Facts have been concealed with forged evidence?
That case left behind scars on all of us.
The scars that SL9 incident left behind.
I got the looks, but he got the brains. He was one of the best prosecutors around. I just made a detective when it went down. It was our first case together.
How old was he? Your brother?
He was 27 at the time. He was awarded the highest honor that very day.
The highest honor?
You mean the King of Prosecutors?
I knew it.
What are you looking at me like that for? It's an honor for a prosecutor.
Mr. Marshall must have been really close with his brother.
The day of the SL9, or the day the SL9 incident took place, that wasn't the same day as...
That's right. It's the day of the evidence transferal.
Interesting.
It was drizzling that morning, by nightfall there was thunder. Can't believe 2 years have gone by already. Tried to steal the evidence so the case wouldn't die.
Apparently someone tried to stop you. Detective Goodman was murdered and the evidence locker was empty.
There was something going on behind the scenes in that case. We all knew that later.
Or wait, was that? Yeah. That later.
Every detective involved in that investigation, save one, was taken care of. Star was fired, I was demoted, and boxed away in a tiny room.
What about Detective Goodman?
If they did something to him too, the commissioners would get suspicious. No, they were careful enough not to be too obvious.
Hey,
Who are you talking about?
Don't get upset, Bambina. I mean Damon Gant and Lana Sky. The investigation led Damon Gant and his second-in-command, Lana Sky. Or was led by. There wasn't a person on the force who hadn't heard of that duo. Case was the biggest step in both of their careers. After the case ended, Lana transferred to the prosecutor's office, right? Yeah, Damon Gant, the new chief of police, arranged for that to happen. She's never been the same since she left. Everyone who knew her said so. Chief Prosecutor Scott was totally different when she was a detective. Now that he mentions it, Emma said something like that too.
Tell me, what happened to my sister?
Sorry, Bambina, but her secret's too well guarded. Never found out. Lana's secret all started 2 years ago. So there you have it. That's my story. Did you enjoy it, partner? It was certainly enlightening. There's one thing for sure I found out in court today. That boy Edgeworth isn't my enemy. He was the one who used falsified evidence to get a guilty verdict. Someone else was the one who gave him that evidence and planned everything. That someone is Damon Gant. Don't believe me? Well, I don't blame you. I won't even be a patrolman after today. Too bad I won't be around to work with you. You become a real scientific investigator. Adios, Bambina. No one's here today, not even Miss Starr.
Everyone's probably busy looking into exactly what went down in the evidence room. That must be where the detectives are.
But we proved in court today on the day of the crime, there was no murder in the evidence room at 5:15.
Yeah, I thought we were finally making some headway in our case.
Instead, it looks like we just ended up making Lana look even more guilty.
Hang in there, Lana.
Gotta find all the answers by tomorrow.
Mr. Edgeworth isn't here.
Maybe he's being questioned by an inquiry committee? Took a real beating in court today.
Yeah, with Lana admitting to falsifying evidence 2 years ago.
Guess we'll just have to come back later. This place is always pretty empty, but today it's deserted.
That must mean everyone's busy solving crimes.
Oh, if you're looking for the others, they're all in the conference room. Thanks. Wow, he actually talked to us. The chief prosecutor saying what he did and the decision about what to do about Mr. Edgeworth. Not to mention our statement to the media and tomorrow's trial. More chaos going on than Thanksgiving and Christmas put together. I think festive is the word you usually use for those.
Sir, we'd like to have a look around Chief Gant's office.
Let's use the connecting hallway to the other building and take the elevator to the top floor.
Really? You mean it's okay for us to go in there? I mean, we aren't police officers or anything.
Hey, you're right. You can't go in there. It's off limits. Now I see where Detective Gumshoe gets his unique charm.
Well, what are we waiting for? Let's head to the chief's office.
Also, can I just say, of fucking course, Gant would have a big organ in his, office. Whoa, where am I?
In the chief's office, silly. At least, that's what it said on the door.
Check out that pipe organ. That's real, isn't it?
Hey, I used to take organ lessons in kindergarten. They used to call me Little Miss Bach.
Oh.
I thought I was a genius until, I could never remember where C was.
Oh gosh, it's been a hot minute. Oh, it's you two.
Chief Gant.
But that paper he was reading on his desk. Or in his desk. So, Righto, have you been swimming lately? No, I haven't. Been kinda busy lately. I can appreciate that. I've had my hands full, too, with Mr. Marshall's misconduct. And Lana's provocative statement. Provocative statement? Oh, you mean about the forged evidence? 2 years have passed since that incident. My, how time flies. See that big picture on the wall over there? It's a picture of Lana, Neil, and me.
This is Mr. Marshall's brother, Prosecutor Neil Marshall.
Well, we took it to commemorate our work together.
Something's not right with this picture. Can't quite seem to put my finger on it, though.
No, that's a suit of armor. It's the suit of armor that's in the background on the right there. Anyway, I'd like to reminisce all day, but there are matters that need my attention. I'm going to lock up here, so let's go out together.
Oh, but this office, it was a crime scene 2 years ago, wasn't it?
That case has long since been over. There's no need to investigate it anymore.
All the same, we'd still like to have a look around.
Perhaps you didn't hear me. I said there's no reason to investigate it anymore. Hurry up and get out. I have a meeting to attend.
Looks like we aren't welcome.
Seems that case isn't over and done with yet after all.
What do you mean?
Chief Gant denied our request to search the crime scene. That means there must be a reason he doesn't want us looking around in there.
You mean like a clue?
Gotta be a way we can get inside the chief's office.
Hey, pal.
Detective Gumshoe, aren't you supposed to be in a meeting?
I'm, just taking a breather. Feet hurt.
From sitting so long?
Actually, I'm serving everyone coffee.
It sounds like Detective Gumshoe's still out of the loop.
Say, have either of you seen Mr. Edgeworth?
Edgeworth? No, why do you ask?
He's under fire from both the police department and the prosecutor's office. It's almost like the battle's between you two in court.
That sounds serious.
Is it because of what my sister said?
It's basically what it all boils down to. I falsified evidence 2 years ago, and Mr. Edgeworth has the whole world after his blood.
Yikes.
Why would Edgeworth be blamed? It's not like he knew the evidence was forged. Lana Skye is the guilty party here, isn't she?
Regardless, the prosecutor's responsible for the evidence they present in court. Not only that, but as you know, there have been lots of rumors going around Mr. Edgeworth. His amazing talent as a prosecutor has kept him safe from those who don't like him. But now with this...
Are there... Are there really so many people who hate him?
In our world, only those with talent rise to the top. Mr. Edgeworth not only has that, but he's young. But he's young. There's no better recipe I know for making enemies.
Hey Dick, keep up the good work.
Yes, sir.
Let's go out for lunch again sometime. My treat.
Yes, sir.
Gotta take me back to that joint sometime, okay, Dick?
Yes, sir.
Seems you don't have any problems with enemies.
Yeah, well, I'm careful not to stick out.
Anyway, I'm a bit worried about him.
Under all this pressure, I'm afraid Mr. Edgeworth just might crack.
Also, can I just say, like, yeah, Detective Gumshoe is, like, a homicide detective, but Detective Gumshoe is also, like, a huge teddy bear, and, like, he needs hugs.
Actually, I took a look at the file earlier while the coffee was brewing.
Wow. He seems to be genuinely concerned for Edgeworth. Well, did you find anything?
The only evidence Dark left behind was during his final attack.
His final attack? You mean...
He killed Prosecutor Marshall, who was trying to protect some girl.
Me.
It seems Detective Gumshoe never realized Emma was the girl. That's when he left the most incriminating evidence of all.
Well, what was it?
Oh, let's see. I think it had something to do with the murder weapon. Oh, I forget. Look, it's all written somewhere in here, okay? Powers of recollection never fail to impress.
Maybe we should show him the murder weapon. It might jog his memory.
Joe Dark was 42 at the time of the crime. He's just a run-of-the-mill businessman.
Businessman? What made him take to serial killing? Wow.
One day on his home from work, he hit someone with his car.
With his car? So, it was an accident?
Accident, yes, but it transformed him into an animal.
An animal?
He killed the man that witnessed the accident, and he killed a lady who saw the second crime. The kid walked by just then, so he killed him too. When he was burying the bodies, a jogger came upon the scene and was killed as well. Finally, he turned himself in.
Seems he was a pretty careless animal.
Of course, this is all conjecture. There wasn't a single shred of evidence.
So he turned himself in.
Yes, but in the middle of his questioning, he fled and murdered his final victim. Prosecutor Marshall. That crime was witnessed by someone too, but luckily Dark was arrested on the spot. It's a good thing that last witness wasn't killed.
Last witness? AKA Emma. I definitely think that another big issue with this case is that it gives you so much evidence. Like, this is the first time in the, there's no other part in the entire game that has you get to 3 pages of evidence. Hell, most of the other trials don't even fill a second page of evidence. About this.
Hey, is that?
It has a tag attached to it with the label SL9 incident on it. I believe this would be the broken murder weapon you were speaking of.
What are you doing with that? Ever since that case was closed, the knife's been locked away in a locker.
On the day Detective Goodman was murdered, this suddenly disappeared from the locker. And was found in Mr. Edgeworth's car muffler.
That's it. I remember what the incriminating piece of evidence was. When you showed me that knife, it all came back to me.
Well, what is it, Detective? Quick, before you forget again. This knife. It was Joe Dark's, wasn't it?
That's right. Traced it back to the store he bought it at. Plus, it had its fingerprints on it, too.
But no one actually witnessed him using it to murder anyone, right?
So his luck ran out. When you take a good look at the knife, see it's broken.
You don't have to take a good look to notice that.
Yeah, well anyway. Take a guess where the broken tip of the knife was found. That's what did him in.
Where was it?
The victim, Neil Marshall, was carrying it, inside of his own body. It was found deep inside the stab wound.
Did it match Dark's knife?
You bet. Down to the last fiber.
That's pretty conclusive.
Well, there you have it in a nutshell. That's all I know.
I'm slipping into Marshall's voice. Can I ask you one more thing?
What is it? If it's money you need, you should ask Chief Gant.
It's not money, but it does concern the chief. His office is a crime scene, right? It's where Prosecutor Neil Marshall was murdered. The chief's out now and his office is locked. But we'd like to have a look around if that's okay.
Well, any detective ID card can unlock the door.
What? Really?
But if I let a civilian in there, I'd be charged with breach of trust.
Breach of trust?
Simply put, I'd be canned.
Oh.
Sorry, pal. I don't plan on getting fired because of you.
How about this ID card? It was Detective Goodman's.
That won't work either. Data was deleted the day he died.
Oh.
So in other words, Gumshoe's our only chance of getting into that office.
I wonder if there's something we could show him that would make him change his mind.
Wonder if Edgeworth's back yet.
There he is. It looks like he's writing something.
What are you doing here?
Sure was quick to throw that paper on the floor. Tough day in court, huh?
I've had to live I've had to live the past 2 years with rumors flying around. What's another allegation to me?
Cheer up, Mr. Edgeworth. I'm rooting for you.
That's Edgeworth for you. Always trying to hide his real feelings.
So what do you want? Unlike some people, I don't have all day. There's no excuse for what I've done. 2 years ago, I used false evidence to obtain a guilty verdict. That's what it all breaks down to, and nothing I can do can erase that fact.
But you didn't know, did you? I mean, that the evidence was falsified.
The police department and the prosecutor's office share a bond of trust. If that bond is broken, we stand to lose everything. The police department's error is my error, my responsibility as the prosecutor in charge. That fact remains the same, no matter what excuses I might have.
Mr. Edgeworth.
I take pride in my work. So tell me why. Why has it all come to this?
Even Edgeworth can't keep this kind of emotion bottled up. Are you up for the trial tomorrow?
First last year's trial, and now this one. Seems all you do is worry about me. To be honest, you're getting on my nerves.
But, Mr. Edgeworth, you can't just walk out on the trial.
Tomorrow's the last day. It's too late to change prosecutors. I'll bet that's what my superiors are banking on. I never thought that that case would come back to haunt me like this.
What do you mean?
The list of evidence. It seems too short. Most lists run twice as long.
It's only half as long as most lists? That's odd.
After Neil Marshall was murdered, I became prosecutor for that case. I may not have been part of the investigation, but I knew what I had to do. Use the evidence I was given to prove the suspect guilty. That was really the only thing on my mind at the time.
Say, we just saw a picture taken around that time.
A picture? Something seems strange about it. Could you tell us again about what happened that day? The day Detective Goodman was murdered? You were participating in a ceremony over at the station, right?
I've never cared for ceremonies, but I had to attend that one.
Because you were receiving...
what? Awarded this, okay.
Those receiving awards can't exactly skip out on the ceremony. I finished up at the office in the morning, then drove over to the police department.
You finished up at the office?
Yes, just odds and ends, clerical stuff. I didn't plan on returning to the office that day. That is, until I was asked to take something back.
Take something back?
This.
Oh yeah, Chief Gant asked you to hold on to that, didn't he?
Yes, it was a piece of evidence in a case that was closed half a year ago. He asked me to bring it back to the prosecutor's office.
That's the story we heard yesterday. So you came back here to the prosecutor's office because the chief asked you.
That's right.
His picture was hanging on the wall in Chief Gant's office. Prosecutor Neil Marshall had just started making a name for himself. Looks like this was taken when he received... Oh. Prosecutor Neil Marshall. He had started making a name for himself. Looks like this was taken when he received the King of Prosecutors trophy.
Speaking of that, there's something that bothers me.
Yes?
That trophy Mr. Marshall is holding. It's a little different than yours.
Yes, you're right. I remember now. Remember what? That was what the official prosecutor's trophy looked like until 2 years ago. There's a story behind its design.
A story?
Sounds interesting. Would you mind telling it to us? It's simple, really. Contradiction is what the award's based on. This award originates from an ancient Chinese tale. In Chinese, the word contradiction is written with 2 characters. The first means halberd, and the second means shield. Have you heard this story?
Wow, Edgeworth, you're really good at Phoenix impressions. It's scary.
Me? Oh, sure. Everyone knows that. Why don't you tell it, though, for Emma's sake? Very well. Long ago in the kingdom of Chu, there was an arms merchant. One day, he presented the king with 2 items. The first was a halberd he claimed could slice through any shield or armor. The second was a shield that he claimed could withstand any weapon. Wait a minute. Those claims contradict each other. Very perceptive. But then again, you've heard this story before, right? Anyway, as you mentioned, the very descriptions of these items discredit them both. When the king pointed this out, the merchant was left speechless. And thus the Chinese word for contradiction was born.
Oh, I see. So the chipped shield and broken knife symbolize...
Precisely so. They symbolize the merchant's items. The ancient tale ends with the merchant at a loss for words. But it's in our nature to pursue matters to their conclusion, even if it results in something as ugly as this.
Wow! Thanks, Mr. Edgeworth. I learned something new today.
That's funny. If that's so, then why are you only given a shield? You'll have to ask Chief Gant. 2 years ago, he had the halberd part of the award abolished. Chief Gant. I wonder what he was writing before.
Come on, Mr. Wright. Let's take a look.
You crazy? Edgeworth is sitting right there.
Just distract him. I'll check it out.
Hey Edgeworth. Is that Detective Gumshoe at the window there? Oh no, he's falling to the ground. Hold on. Let me see what the girl's doing crawling around my feet. He didn't even look.
What? Letter of
If you're having trouble reading it, I'll read it for you. It says, Letter of Resignation. Resignation? Edgeworth, you don't mean... I'm tired, right? I feel as if something inside me has died.
But, Mr. Edgeworth, none of it was your fault.
I know the path I've walked. You don't need to tell me. And the path I've walked hasn't been a just one. I can't just forgive myself for what I've done. And no one else should forgive me either. Uh-oh. I think he's serious.
Mr. Wright, please, you have to do something.
It's a letter of resignation. I wonder if I can use it for anything. Oh gosh, this is gonna be Angel Star, isn't it?
Excuse me. Would either of you care for a quarter pound of roast beef?
Miss Star. Yeah, she's out of lunches.
You certainly are the curious sort, aren't you? Kind of like the first person who sucked a cow's nipple to discover milk.
I don't remember that line at all, but okay.
Still, I never thought you'd go digging up that case from 2 years ago.
Everyone in this trial was involved in the SL9 incident. Not only that, but the murder occurred on the very day the evidence from the case was due for transferal. This can't be attributed to mere coincidence.
Aren't you forgetting something? You know that little scene I happened to witness?
Instant Lana stabbed Detective Goodman with a knife.
No matter how much of the past you dig up, it won't change what I saw. Roast beef is meant to be savored when eaten.
Stirs hatred toward Lana. All dates back to 2 years ago.
Joe Dark. That's a name I'll not soon forget. We trailed him for half a year. Oh, the pressure. Still, I don't think I was ever more alive than I was then. Those days were steamier than a bowl of hot gravy. Poor Jake Marshall. Though he must have been going through hell. Or poor Jake Marshall, though. He must have been going through hell.
You mean because of his brother's death?
They were close, those two. After Neil died, something took over Jake. He became obsessed. Seeing Jake like that made her all the more desperate.
Her?
Lana Skye. My sister. The best of the best were on that SL9 case. Of course, they were led by that legendary duo. Lana and Chief Gant. That legendary pair was the reason we were able to keep up our investigation. That's why we were so shocked over how it turned out.
You mean with the forging of the evidence?
Don't get me wrong. Joe Dark got what he deserved. Still, it was obvious the evidence produced in court was being manipulated. Items our team never found would suddenly appear when the other items were kept secret. Or while other items were kept secret. But you don't have proof anything illegal was done. I'm proof enough of what happened. After that case, all of us save Goodman were relieved of our duties. Most without so much as an explanation. Then Lana Skye transferred to the prosecutor's office and became chief prosecutor. Lana always wanted to be a prosecutor. Nothing's quite as simple as it appears. Huh? Lana Skye was merely being used as a pawn. That's my take on the matter.
He's being used?
Damon Gant and Lana Skye. Gant led the investigation with Lana second in command. They were the best. They solved all kinds of cases together, didn't they? Damon Gant's magnetism, in particular, was almost unreal.
His magnetism?
By that, I mean his ability to attract evidence. He'd produced the most incredible evidence in the cases he handled.
Incredible evidence? You mean...
Oh yes, there were rumors about him even back then. No one dared confront him, though.
Take it she's talking about forged evidence.
Back then, everyone looked up to Lana. All the detectives wanted to be like her. Really? Oh yes, myself included. I was a fool, really. She hated anything crooked and always watched out for the other detectives. That's why she was so concerned for Jake. Mr. Marshall. When Jake's brother was murdered, she felt as if she had lost her own brother. If it wasn't for her, I don't think Jake would have ever recovered from the shock. That's what makes it all the more infuriating. Miss Starr. That's why I'll never be able to forgive her. Why did she have to turn so cold after that?
Lana transferred to the prosecutor's office 2 years ago, didn't she?
Yes, thanks to Chief Gant's powerful influence. Chief. That's right. Having solved the SL9 case, his position as chief was secured. There was only one thing left for him to control. And then no one would stand in his way. The prosecutor's office.
What? You mean that's why Lana was transferred?
If he could control the prosecutor, he could control the prosecutor's office. That must have been his goal all along. But how could he control Lana? I don't know, but one thing's for sure. Ever since that case ended, she's never been the same. It's only logical to conclude. There must have been a reason for her change.
At last. I'm finally getting close to the bottom of this ugly mess. Thank you, Miss Star.
You listen to me, Rookie. It takes more than just ingredients to create fine cuisine. I hope you turn out to be a better chef than I've been.
Oh, you're back. You're still here? Gotta make 150 copies of these files. Brewing coffee, copying files, turning into a regular DJ.
You're a DJ as well?
If I'm not mistaken, I think he means desk jockey.
Oh, that DJ.
I'd admire your persistency, but my answer's still no. Not letting you into the chief's office, period. It'd be my neck on the line. The office at the last crime scene in the SL9 incident. I have to take a look in there.
There's gotta be something we can do to make the detective change his mind. Due to recent events, I hereby announce my resignation as a public prosecutor.
Really wrote a resignation letter.
Wow! Even when resigning, Mr. Edgeworth is cool and concise. Still, it wasn't his fault.
Someone has to be held responsible. That's how it is in the grown-up world.
Yeah, but that responsibility means nothing if he just quits.
Well, not everyone sees it that way.
To truly take responsibility, you should have to work the rest of your life for no pay.
One tough grown-up world out there. That's one tough grown-up world there. What's this crumpled up piece of paper? No way. Mr. Edgeworth can't be serious. Is he ever not serious? Can't believe they've pushed him this far.
Mr. Edgeworth really feels responsible.
When I first met him, I thought he was as cold as ice too. But I know different now. He trusted us detectives to provide him with sound evidence. We betrayed him.
Detective...
That's it. I've made up my mind.
But...
Here, take my ID card.
We can't do that. If someone found out, they wouldn't let you off the hook with another lost item report.
Look at me. It's no secret I'm already out of the loop. After all, I'm friends with Mr. Edgeworth. Depending on how this case turns out, I may already be as good as terminated. Hey, Chocolate Creamer, how are you doing? Wait, what? At least let me do this, for Mr. Edgeworth's sake. Alright, Detective. Thank you. But yeah, welcome in. How are you doing?
Here it goes, Mr. Wright. We're in. If anyone finds us now...
Detective Gumshoe's a goner. That happens, I'm counting on you to bail me out. Pulling a double at work today again. Ah, that sucks. I've only ever had to do doubles at work a handful of times, but they always consistently suck ass.
Sorry, I thought you were a ghost.
Didn't even know you could slap a ghost. Detective Gumshoe, what are you doing sneaking up on us like that? I wasn't sneaking. I was just worried something might go wrong. So I came too.
If you're here, then what's the point in giving us your ID card? Gumshoe's ID card rendered crushed and unusable.
Hey, don't do that to my card. Hardly ever get the chance to come in here. So I figured I'd have a look around myself. Besides, we're all in this together now.
You really do want to get fired, don't you?
Not if we're lucky. Come on, let's see what we can find out.
I had a bad feeling about this. That desk on the other side of the room. Was that your sister's?
Yes, that's where I was waiting for Lana. On that day 2 years ago.
Is anyone using it now?
No, sir. This is entirely Chief Gant's office now. He practices a strict policy of preserving the crime scene.
It's a strange reason to leave it there.
He leaves it as a warning to everyone else. He wants us to always be alert. He told us so himself at our New Year's party. Of course, he was pretty intoxicated at the time.
I see.
So, ever since Lana left, no one ever touches that desk?
No one except Chief Gant, and the cleaning lady who's in here each morning.
Get paid extra money for helping other districts. Still, 2 years have passed since that incident. There can't possibly be any clues remaining.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
You only came in here to look around, right? Because it's one of the SL9 crime scenes. I mean, that's your only reason for coming here, isn't it?
Why do you ask?
You don't think? Nah. You wouldn't be... Nah.
Work at Five Guys? I can't, like, I can't imagine working over at, working... What's the right... It's not retail, it's working fast food. I can't imagine working fast food.
No, there's no way. Never mind. Don't worry about it.
Okay, now then let's look around a bit more.
Hey, hold on. Not so fast, buddy.
Huh? What is it?
When someone tells you don't worry about it, it's supposed to start bothering you, pal.
Don't just let it go with that. Sorry, this guy's starting to get on my nerves. Okay, so what's bothering you?
You don't think Chief Gant might be a suspect, do you?
Customer's asking the dumbest questions. Yeah.
What? He's right, Mr. Wright. What do you think of him?
Chief Gant. So it's finally come to this. There's no way there could still be evidence 2 years later. The evidence 2 years later. Thanks for the follow, Chocolate Creamer. What do I think of him? Perhaps it's best I don't divulge my feelings yet.
Here you go, ignoring me again.
This is a safe, isn't it?
Safe? That word is ripe with intrigue.
Okay, if you say so.
It looks like a code needs to be entered in this panel to open it.
A 7-digit number. I think I might just know what it is.
You know what it is?
I have a hunch.
Oh, I know. Wanna try my birth date? It's...
I have a better idea. Here goes nothing. Bingo.
What number did you enter?
Whose birthday was that, pal?
7777777. Final ID card number on that record.
What?
The number of the mysterious executive officer who entered the room that day.
Mean
7777777. That ID number? I think you're 17 shy this time. This can only mean one thing. That's Chief Gant's ID number.
Say, anyone care to look inside?
money in there? How much does he have stashed away?
Look, it's a,
Shard from a broken cup?
Somehow looks familiar. Where have I seen this before?
there's something else in here too.
What's this? Looks like a piece of leather cloth.
This is a handprint, isn't it?
Hey, saw someone wearing a shirt like that one. Think the chief made up the design?
I don't think so.
Oh, it was just a thought.
Is this it? Is this all that was in the safe?
Apparently so. It's empty now.
Piece of cloth with a handprint on it and a broken shard from a cup.
They look like pieces of evidence.
Yeah, but unless you can prove they have something to do with the case, right, I can't just let you take them. After all, it's my neck on the line here.
Great, now I have to get their relevance, or I have to prove their relevancy to get them. How are these two items related to the SL9 incident?
Come on, there's gotta be something we can show the detective.
Detective Gumshoe, could you have another look at this jar?
I remember when the three of us put that back together. Oh, those were the days.
It's kind of early to be nostalgic.
Wasn't this jar a piece of evidence from that case?
That's right. One of the shards had SL9 incident sticker on it.
Doesn't this ring any bells? Do you know that fragment we just found?
You mean this one that was in the safe?
Yes, that one. That was in, that was in the safe.
Now that you mention it, it's ringing a lot of bells. Let's see if it fits.
Here, let me see that shard. I'll take a crack at this. I'm gonna need to go get more water soon.
Go ahead, pal. Show us what a rookie can do.
Mr. Wright, here's some glue.
I can piece this together again. It'll prove Chief Gant was knowingly hiding evidence. Here goes. Don't even have to rotate it. There, it fits like a charm. That, of course, means Chief Gant willingly and knowingly hid a piece of this jar in his safe. In other words, he concealed a piece of evidence from the SL9 incident.
But
Hey guys, get a load of this.
What is it?
This piece you just attached, it's different from the others.
there's a reddish line on it.
Reddish line. Blood.
I don't get it. Why would Chief Gant hide this in his safe?
Detective Gumshoe, I'd like you to have a look at this.
Hey, I know what that is. So, you want to take some fingerprints?
That's a great idea, Detective.
Alright, go to town. Sheesh.
What are you doing? Why are you sticking out your hand like that?
Go ahead, take my fingerprints.
It's not your fingerprints we want to take.
Huh? Come on, this isn't the time for jokes. We're talking about that cloth we found in the safe.
Oh, I knew that. One with a handprint on it, right?
Sheesh, where's your sense of humor?
Okay, Mr. Wright, let's check for prints. Sprinkle the powder. Once they've been absorbed by the prints, blow the rest away.
What are you, my mom? I don't have to be told a million times. Alright, let's get this over with.
Give it my best shot.
That kind of result won't be any good for matching prints.
But it does look like we'll get a cleaner result from this print.
Okay, let's try a different finger then.
Still disappointed there weren't $50 in the safe. You're not shocked by the revelation that Chief Gant was concealing evidence? The stupid mechanic is so finicky. Yeah, I play Zelda. I've been playing the new one off stream recently. I've been enjoying it. I'm very tempted to stream through Skyward Sword HD. No. How can this be? What are Emma's fingerprints doing here?
Hey, you found a match? Whose fingerprints were they?
Huh? Oh, it seems the prints are too old. They aren't clear enough to get a match.
Oh, that's too bad. I thought they'd be Dark's prints.
Psst. Hey you, over here. What's going on here? What are the kids' prints doing inside the chief's safe? Don't ask me. Let's just keep this information from Emma for now. Here, maybe you should hold on to this. What is this piece of cloth, anyway? It's smooth and sort of feels like vinyl. Think I've felt something like this before. Nah, I can't remember. Seems like this is becoming a habit with you. Can't keep anything in my head lately.
Note to self, Detective Gumshoe is going senile.
Emma's fingerprints were found on this cloth. I have a bad feeling about this. I feel a lot better now that this chair's complete.
But it only raises another question. What was a piece of it doing in the chief's safe?
More importantly, why wasn't there any money in there? Isn't that what safes are for, anyway? I have a feeling the outcome of tomorrow's trial just might hinge on this. This is the real deal, isn't it? This armor and these weapons? Sure is, pal. Chief doesn't care for imitations. First the pipe organ, now this armor? Do you know how many taxpayer dollars must have gone into this room?
What, you mean we're paying for this? That's it, I'm not paying 1 cent of my taxes.
Don't have any taxes to pay. Careful what you say. Who knows, Chief might be hiding in the armor as we speak. I don't think he'd fit in there.
Even if he did, he'd never be able to get back out.
Cut it out, you guys don't know how scary the guy can be.
Wow, look at the size of Chief Gant's desk.
Speaking of that, when we were here earlier... Oh, it's you two.
Chief Gant.
But that paper he was reading in his desk.
I wonder what he was, Damn, Phoenix, that was a really good impression. But can you please knock it off? It kinda creeps me out.
I wonder what he was reading. Looks like a list of evidence. List of evidence? In most cases, the list runs twice as long as this, though.
Hey, look at the case name.
Huh? SL9 incident? Wonder what this is doing here. Hold on, detective. What did you just say? Said, wonder what? No, about evidence lists. Normally they're twice as long? That's right, because there wasn't a lot of evidence. Half-size list of evidence.
The list of evidence, it seems too short. Most lists are run twice as long.
What would the other half of the list be doing here?
I knew it. The chief must be hiding something about that case.
It would appear so. Oh, was that any help? Of course. Thanks to your ID card, we were able to get some hard evidence.
Now that's not very kind, is it?
In other words, if it wasn't for his ID card, he would have been useless. Isn't that right, you in the coat? Chief Gant.
We didn't think you'd be back so soon.
Fortunately, I'm a man who believes in signs. As I was walking to my meeting, I happened to look out a window and saw a stray dog run right into a pole. Just then, I thought of a certain detective.
You mean me, sir?
Now then, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you all to leave.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Oh, you in the coat. Me, sir? Drop off your ID on the way out. You won't be needing it anymore.
But, sir...
Now get out.
Yes, sir.
We'll be on our way too, then. Wait. You, the one without the spiky hair. Don't go yet.
Me, sir?
I'd like a word with you.
But, sir, I'm not a licensed scientific investigator yet.
You with spiky hair. You're free to go.
Mr. Wright?
Phoenix just actually leaves her there. Look, pal. If I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times. Chief's office is off limits. But no, you just had to go sneaking in there like that, didn't you?
Thought you said that you didn't care anymore if you were fired.
Yeah, but if I knew it'd be like this, never would have said it.
Now that I've seen the evidence Chief Gant was hiding in his office, I think I'm finally starting to get the picture. But why has she kept eerily silent about it all this time?
Anyway, you listening to me? I'm gonna try to smooth things over with the Chief again. Later, pal.
After that, I heard from Emma. She said the police wanted to ask her some questions, so she'll be busy for the rest of the day. I see. So the chief asked Emma to come in for questioning. It's no use thinking about it. Tomorrow's the final day in court. I'm committed to doing everything I can to defend you, which is why I'm here. But I've already told you all I can. What you've told me over these past couple of days is absolutely nothing. Not a single useful thing. Really? I believe I did mention something quite important. Something I told you right at the beginning. I said that I was the one who stabbed Detective Goodman.
No, I think I finally figured it out. I know who it is that's lurking behind your words.
Mia did a good job mentoring you. I'm rather jealous. It seems Edgeworth was right.
Edgeworth?
Once you're convinced you know something, no one can persuade you otherwise. Thick-headed is the term he used, I believe.
Now's my chance to get her to tell me the rest of the story. I have to admit, I was more than a little perplexed at first. You insisted that you did it, yet there was no incriminating evidence. That's when it hit me. It's not that you're unwilling to tell the truth. It's that you're incapable of doing so because of a certain individual.
What an intriguing notion. A certain individual, you say? So you think I'm protecting this person?
Protecting? No, I think afraid of is more like it.
If I'm not mistaken, the person in question may have persuaded you to silence. For argument's sake, Mr. Wright, whom may I ask is this person you're speaking of? The one I'm supposedly so frightened of? What is this person's name? Thomas Sky? Mr. Wright, you are addressing the chief prosecutor. Do not forget your place.
Take it she's still not ready to spill the beans.
My apologies. Could you please tell me a bit more about what you think you know? We were partners until 2 years ago. I respected him as a detective.
Assuming he is respectable, then tell me something. Why would he try to hide his crimes?
His crimes?
Both you and Edgeworth will be brought before a board of inquiry for what you did. Specifically, hiding and forging evidence.
Of course, those are serious offenses.
Why is it, though, that Chief Gant's name was never mentioned?
Chief Gant.
Edgeworth didn't know the truth behind the forgery. The only party who could have possibly tampered with the evidence was...
me. I had access because I was second in command of that investigation.
Yes, you, but also one other, Damon Gant.
If you intend to accuse Chief Gant, you'll need more than just words. Show me proof that Chief Gant falsified evidence in that case.
I just found this in a safe in the chief's office. This jar piece and this piece of cloth. Do you know what these are? They're pieces of evidence from the SL9 incident. The person concealing evidence was none other than Chief Gant himself. Now tell me, why are you taking all the blame for him?
Touché, Mr. Wright. It's as you surmised. I cannot disobey the chief's orders, even if it means being found guilty for murder.
Why not?
Come now, Mr. Wright. You can't possibly expect me to be able to tell you that. 3 days ago, I had no choice but to cooperate.
In the murder of Detective Goodman?
Or perhaps I should say, follow orders. Yes, that's more accurate than cooperate. Although I can't tell you the details, I can say that I was given an order that day.
I need you to dispose of Bruce Goodman's body. You'll find it inside the trunk of Miles Edgeworth's car. Just as I suspected, despite what everyone believes, you were not the one who murdered Detective Goodman.
Correct. I was trying to take the body out of Edgeworth's car. The trunk's lock was broken, and I discovered that murder weapon while inspecting the body.
Murder weapon? You mean Edgeworth's knife?
No. When I found the body, this was the knife stuck into it.
Knife from the SL9 incident? Serial killer Joe Dark's knife?
I couldn't just leave that knife in him, so I took it out and stabbed him with another knife.
That would be Edgeworth's knife.
That's right. Even though he was already dead, my hands were shaking at the thought of stabbing him. That's why I ended up cutting my hand.
That's the reason for the bandage on your right hand.
Yes. It seems that I got blood on the victim's shoes as well. And then... she saw me just as I plunged the knife in.
A star, huh? Why did you need to hide Dark's knife so badly?
It took a lot of work to finally close the Dark case 2 years ago. It was over with. I didn't ever want it to be opened again. My intent was to prevent that, by whatever means possible.
So, you hid Dark's knife.
The weapon used to stab the detective was evidence in the Joe Dark's case. If the word got out, which it would, the reporters would have a field day with that.
So you wrapped the knife in your scarf and hid it. In Edgeworth's exhaust pipe.
Right. Then I called my sister. To tell her what had happened and to ask her to hide the knife that was inside my muffler.
You asked Emma?
I didn't want anyone on the force to know about this.
That would explain why Emma was so confident, or is so confident, about Lana's innocence.
Speaking of phone calls, I had a bad feeling about one of them that day.
Bad feeling?
The truth is, after I received those orders from Chief Gant, first thing I did was make a phone call. A phone call to Patrolman Jake Marshall.
To Marshall? Why on earth would you call him?
The lead investigator for the SL9 incident had been murdered. I wanted that fact to be kept hidden, and I needed help. He was the only other person I could trust. Or at least, I thought I could trust him at the time. However, it seems that after I spoke to him, he went off on an escapade of his own.
Oh, you mean...
Not wanting the case to die, he decided to take things into his own hands.
He disguised himself as Detective Goodman and tried to steal the evidence.
He had already stolen the ID card, but it seems he still hadn't made up his mind to break into the evidence room. After my phone call, any remaining doubts he had must have disappeared.
So your phone call caused the incident in the evidence room.
I'm afraid that's all I can tell you.
But, Lana...
You've earned my respect, Mr. Wright, both as a defense attorney and an investigator. Now please, don't pursue this any further in court tomorrow.
Tomorrow's trial. There's only one way to drive off Lana's demons. I've got to get to the bottom of everything. Detective Goodman's real murderer? What went down in the chief's office 2 years ago. I think I'm gonna go ahead and end here, just because I don't trust Rise from the Ashes to not have a 2.5 hour long trial segment here. So, we will finish this game tomorrow. And, I don't know what we will... I might just end stream early tomorrow, I'm not sure. It really depends on if I can find something that will fill the time slot. Otherwise, I'm not entirely sure what I'm streaming after this, either. I wanted to do, I kind of want to do Pokemon soonish, but I also don't have an overlay for it yet, so it might be a bit before that happens. But, yeah, so, thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope to see you again tomorrow for the finale, hopefully. Cassette beasts. Yeah. Maybe when I get around to doing Pokemon, I'll do a Nuzlocke. Maybe. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, so, exclamation point Discord if you want to join the Discord. I'll likely be putting a poll in there soonish. I'm struggling trying to decide what, games to put on the poll. So, yeah. So there's that, exclamation point socials if you want to check out, the YouTube and my Twitter that I don't do anything with currently. I'm working on some art currently that will be going on my Twitter, so, that'll be something to look forward to. But, yeah. Who to raid?
Um... Yeah, anyone got any recommendations for raid? Sachi, Nautilus? Foxy Bit? I don't want to raid people that are doing Tears of the Kingdom, though. Yeah, I don't want to do Tears of the Kingdom because I don't want to accidentally end up spoiling myself on it. Actually, yeah, that's why we're not raiding DG. Wolsk is streaming, actually. Actually, who all in my list? Because the stupid raid menu doesn't actually tell you who on your list, other than, like, 5 people, is streaming. Elio Live? Playing Lost Ark? Yeah, let's raid Wolsk. It's been a hot minute. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope to see you again, tomorrow for more. Oh, my Switch went into sleep mode. So yeah, I guess have a good one and take care.